Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Naruto saves Anko from Orochimaru. Before I start, please support for more amazing content, and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by ThiccAnko and link in description and support writer. Let's start the video. Chapter 1, The Long Talk. Naruto flinched as he downed yet another shot of the bar's strongest liquor. He slammed the small glass onto the wooden counter he rested his arms on, taking a deep breath as the liquid slowly spread a very warm feeling throughout his body that he was all too familiar with by now. Had he been a normal shinobi, his liver would be screwed. But even with his healing factor granted to him by Kyubi no Yoko, he still could feel every ounce of sake that he consumed over the last hour or so. His eye itched, and the simple movement of rubbing it made him feel as though the world started spinning below him. The bartender that stood a few feet from him looked at him and sighed. He'd seen some pretty impressive drinkers in his years at bartending this place, but he didn't know anyone who could take 15 shots of his hardest stuff like this kid, and Naruto was a minor at that. Here, the rule was that the word teen cannot be in the number of your age in order for them to purchase drinks. And Naruto was 17. At the other bar across the village, anyone 16 and up could drink. But this one was for adults that had a bit more mileage in life. He had refused to let him buy anything at first, but Naruto insisted that he had the money, and needed to drink. If it wasn't for the look in his eyes that the bartender saw, Naruto probably wouldn't have even been here. He saw that the kid had been through something, and even the bartender could tell he could really use a drink. Another. Naruto slurred, finding that his tongue went numb from the chemicals he consumed. The bartender rolled his eyes and shook his head. Kid, if you have another drink, you'll match your age. I think you've had enough, he says, looking at Naruto sympathetically from across the counter. Naruto looked up at him with a minor glare, finding it hard to focus his eyes on him. I'm fine, just gimme another one, Naruto commanded, extending his hand out as if the bartender would just hand him the whole bottle. The clerk shook his head. Sorry kid, I'm not giving you any more to drink. I shouldn't even be allowing you to sit here right now, so why not just go home and stay there for the rest of the night before you do something you'll regret, huh? Before Naruto could reply, the bartender walked away to serve someone else. Asshole. Naruto spat. Despite the clerk refusing to give him another drink, he knew that he was right. Naruto was fucked up. He knew he needed to get home soon, but decided to wait until some of the alcohol dissipated from his system. If he tried to go home now, he'd probably fall all over the place. He turned around in his seat and overlooked the whole bar. There wasn't many people here, considering how it was a Monday night. Most people were probably preparing to go to bed right about now. Soon, he spotted someone he knew. Since the alcohol had greatly affected his ability to think clearly, he couldn't remember her name. He looked at the posterior of the woman wearing nothing but fishnet, an orange skirt, and a bra on. She was bending over one of the pool tables to reach across and hit a cue ball with her cue stick. It was then that a feeling of lust entered Naruto's body. The position she was in it was hypnotic. Naruto wasn't particularly known to ogle women in a public setting, but damn, she was sexy. He still couldn't remember her name, even as he looked at her purple spiky hair that was tied in a weird upside-down ponytail. However, it was a trigger for him to start thinking about the point in his life where he engaged in the Chunin exams, particularly the test he had to take in the Forest of Death. Then, for some reason, he unconsciously brushed his fingertips against his left cheek. He noticed this and then remembered how he managed to get a cut on that cheek before he entered that deadly forest. Anko. That's what her name was. The proctor lady from the second part of those exams Naruto remembered. He never gave Anko much thought, let alone a lustful one, prior to tonight. She was actually pretty scary and creepy from what he could remember. But right now, he was eyeing Anko's body down like a starving lion that just spotted a disabled gazelle. Anko's legs were nicely toned and looked as smooth as velvet. Her butt was being pushed out from the position she was in, and even though Anko had enough decency to wear black, skin-tight shorts underneath, Naruto could see under her skirt. Her cheeks were round and grand in size, and looked as though it had the perfect combination of firm and soft. Anko then moved to the side of the pool table, giving him a profile view of her whole body. Her breasts looked just as wonderful as her backside. Her waist was thin with a flat stomach, which showed a slight toning of abs. He noticed how she wasn't wearing her trench coat like she usually does, but saw it hanging on a rack which was close to her table. She had to know that naturally, in a bar predominantly filled with men, they would be eyeing her down if she wore the outfit she was wearing without the coat, right? Did she crave the attention? Or was she just trying to cool off and didn't care about the half of a dozen eyes in the bar ogling her body down? The reason was irrelevant to the fact that he never noticed until now how tantalizing Anko looked to him until today. The alcohol could very well play a factor into this though, but at the end of the day, it didn't matter. Naruto liked what he saw. He saw Anko bend over again, and saw how nice the arch in her back looked. She had curves that could put some models to shame. The more he looked at her, the more uncomfortable his pants became. Soon enough, Naruto surrendered to his sultry thoughts, edging him on like a good wingman would. Next thing he knew, Naruto was standing behind Anko, with both of his hands full of ass. Then, he was on the floor. Everything had happened so fast. It seemed like 2 seconds ago, he was still sitting at the bar, checking Anko out as she practiced her billiard skills. Now, he was on his back, with what felt like pressure on his right cheek. Anko punched him, but the alcohol numbed his sense to feel anything. People at the bar looked on with intrigue, wondering how things were going to play out. Naruto lifted his torso, and saw Anko staring down at him with a face that even death himself couldn't make. "You've got to be joking," Anko stated with a deadpan expression upon actually seeing who her harasser was. "Who the hell let a genin in here?" Naruto only stared, holding the cheek Anko had struck with a lot of force. Did he really just grope Anko? A jounin that had damn near a decade over him in age? Naruto mumbled. He didn't know what to say. Anko became frustrated with his lack of a response, and grabbed the front of his coat. Now, Naruto found himself face to face with her. "Give me one good reason why I shouldn't ram this Q stick right into your colon right now," Anko ordered. Naruto looked at her. Then, he began chuckling. "Man, was he fucked up. Because I'm not really into stuff like that." "Wow," Anko muttered under her breath. "This kid had a fucking death wish. You're fucking with me, aren't you?" Naruto laughed. He honestly didn't care anymore, not really, but trust me, I'm down if you are. The Jinchuriki let out a grunt when Anko dropped him, making his back slam against the hardwood floor. "Don't kill him yet, Anko," the jounin told herself with a deep breath, closing her eyes and counting to 10. She then dropped the pool cue and grabbed a kunai from her holster on her thigh. She crouched down in front of Naruto on the floor, and pointed the blade right at his jugular. "Hey," she began with another deep breath, "you're lucky that you're young and stupid. It's actually saving your life right now, because I can assure you that if you were any one of these older assholes that are currently looking at us, you'd have one of these pool balls lodged in your skull right now. So does that make me special?" Anko closed her eyes again. "You're making it extremely hard for me to not kill you in front of all these people. You realize that, right? Well, maybe that's what I want. You realize that, right?" Anko was confused by his answer. She never really knew Naruto too well, but she did know who he was. She remembered him being the only loudmouthed genin mocking her that one time she was the proctor for the Chunin exams a few years back. She also remembered the reports of him among the ANBU from them chasing him around the village whenever he committed pranks. She had to admit though, some of his pranks were golden. However, the reason she was confused was because she knew enough about Naruto to know that he wasn't being very Naruto right now. Something was wrong with him. She analyzed him, studying his features. He had bags underneath his eyes. Yep, he'd been crying. A lot, too. There's definitely a reason why he was in a bar he was not supposed to be in, getting drunk and making decisions that ended up giving him a fist to the face. Was it her responsibility to figure out why? Of course not. She could, and probably should, just kick his ass and let that be his lesson. He grabbed her ass. After all, she'd done a lot worse to men that did a lot less to her. So why was it that this jackass was getting a free pass? Anko shook her head and stood up. "I'm probably gonna regret this," she muttered to herself. She placed the pool stick that was in her other hand on the pool table and put on her trench coat. "Get up," Anko called, heading toward the exit. "Follow me." Naruto was confused. Anko stopped at the door and looked back at him. "I said let's go. Get off your ass, and come with me." Naruto still wondered what exactly was going on, because nothing that happened in the last 10 minutes was going as expected. However, he nonetheless decided to do as she said. He stumbled to his feet and shakily followed Anko out of the bar, becoming the main conversation among the people remaining in the bar for the rest of that night. Anko had to almost literally drag him to where they were going. But soon, Naruto found himself inside an apartment, which he could only assume was Anko's home. "Take a seat," she told him, as she walked in a different direction while taking her trench coat off. Naruto spotted a couch a few feet away and did as he was told. He wondered what Anko was going to do. Were they going to have sex? Was she going to literally kill him? Shockingly enough, Naruto wouldn't have a problem with either scenarios. Anko then came back and sat next to him on the couch. She leaned back and sat her feet up on the coffee table in front of her. "What's going on with you, hun?" she asked in a tone that barely sounded like a question, as if he was wasting her time. She wasn't looking at him, and had a somewhat bored expression on her face. Naruto chuckled drunkenly. "Well, I was hoping you'd answer that for me. I can barely remember what happened in the past 10 minutes. No, smartass." Anko responded, clearly annoyed. "What's going on with you? Why were you at a place like that, getting wasted off your ass? I know you probably just finished dealing with teen angst and puberty. But seriously, you're not doing normal shit that someone your age should be doing." This time she was looking at him. Naruto gave a small chuckle and shrugged. "Hey, maybe I'm just mature for my age. If anything, it'd be quite the contrary." Anko shot back. "Look, I know you're not a bad guy. Stupid? Probably. But there's no reason for you to even think to have the audacity to grab my ass, give me smart-ass remarks, and continue giving me smart-ass remarks despite how I made it clear that you were making it harder and harder for me not to just end your life with each passing second. And I not only say this as your superior in rank, but as someone from the opposite gender who would appreciate it if you don't do what you did to me to other women as well. I'm sorry." Naruto said. "Can we kiss and make up?" Spots of blood flew onto Anko's hardwood floors. It took Naruto well over a few seconds to realize what happened. All he heard was a quick whoosh of air, then the sounds of liquid droplets hitting the ground. But then, he felt a warm and wet sensation sliding down his cheek. Anko sheathed her kunai and rested her head in her palm. Okay, see, what you're not going to do is think that you're gonna play this creepy little game you think we're playing without receiving some kind of repercussion for it. You're not being funny or cute, I'm telling you that now, she said sourly, yet still sounding bored. Naruto wiped his face, and was shocked to see his hand covered in blood. Anko sliced his cheek open. He was hit with nostalgia from the first ever time he ever interacted with her, and it wasn't good nostalgia. Especially since she cut him deeper now than she did before, as droplets of his blood was slowly leaking and dropping down his chin, staining his orange pants. Naruto finally got the message. Okay, I'm sorry, he apologized, stunned at Anko's speed. She drew a kunai, positioned it in a way to cut him, and went through with the motion of cutting him all in less than the time that it took him to blink. Shit, you cut me pretty deep, I'm dripping blood over here. Yeah, well, you need to understand a few things. One of them is that what I did was just a warning. A polite one at that. Anko turned her head to see Naruto just staring at her. Polite? For me anyways. She shrugged, and understand that you probably got maybe 1 or 2 more warnings, that will likely be worse than the last, before I start getting mean, and understand that I won't kill you. But trust me, I know how to make you wish that I would. I'm one of Konoha's best interrogators for a reason. Naruto had to say that he was impressed at how fast she made him sober up. And he was sure the QB didn't even contribute to that as much as Anko just did. Oh, and since you consumed what seems like an impressive amount of alcohol, your blood is going to be a lot thinner. You can definitely slip away from blood loss if you keep going down this route. Anko then turned her head to him. Now would you like to start over? That question was probably the most polite she's been since the bar, oddly enough. Yeah, good. Anko nodded. Now I'll ask again. What's going on with you? What's got you acting like such an ass? Naruto took a deep breath and understood what was going on now. Well, I just don't want to be here anymore. Here as in alive? Yeah, oof. Anko sighed. Well, that's actually pretty obvious. You must have a death wish if you were pulling the things you were pulling with me. Humbly speaking, of course. How is that humbly speaking? We're getting off topic. Anko cleared her throat. Care to elaborate on why you feel like this? Naruto took his time to answer that question, and Anko patiently waited. Because I'm a monster. Anko's eyebrow raised. She had to tread carefully here. Obviously, she knows that he's the QB's jailer, but she hasn't been brought up to speed in knowing if he knew that himself. And she wasn't too sure if he was referring to his actual monster or himself. You're just young and dumb. Anko shrugged, and hey, all of us were young and dumb once upon a time. That doesn't make us monsters. I know you know about me and the QB. Every adult does. Naruto said matter-of-factly. Oh, thank God. Anko sighed. This conversation was going to be difficult for me otherwise. Naruto shook his head and stood up. Look, I'm sorry for being such an asshole to you. For what it's worth, I genuinely just thought you were attractive. But I do know that what I did was very uncalled for, and I deserved to get punched in the face. You hit really hard, by the way. Ooh, how noble and flattering. Anko remarked with a smirk. But obviously I'm not in the proper mindset to be around people right now. So I can just go home and leave you alone. I know you probably don't want to deal with me, he said with a sigh. The head version of you can go kick rocks, for sure. But if you continue to speak to me the way you have been since I sliced your face open, I can allow us to have a respectable and non-lethal conversation. She said. Nah, that's okay, Naruto replied reluctantly. I should probably just turn in. Naruto held his bleeding cheek as he started heading for the door. But before he could turn her doorknob, hey! Anko called out, if I really didn't want to deal with you, I'd have just kicked your ass and left you at that bar. Trust me, your actions have warranted just that. She then turned to look at him. This time, for what felt like the first time, she looked him straight in the eyes. Naruto, I'm trying to help you out, she stated. She hated being what most people would consider kind, but she was willing to do so for those she respected. Most people didn't really deserve her kindness or respect, in Anko's eyes. However, Anko always saw Naruto and thought that he deserved a ton of respect, not only from herself, but everyone. Being the jailer of a being that could single-handedly wipe out this entire village was only one reason among many others why she thought he deserved to be treated with respect and consideration. She had seen how the village shunned him, berated him, and was so harsh on him for something out of his control. It always disgusted her to her core, and while she tried not to care too loudly, as to avoid getting roped up in unnecessary drama, she knew that her line of duty was not only to protect and serve her village, but to still look out for her comrades. Especially the Yandame's son. Anko put 2 and 2 together relatively fast to figure that out, and Anko honestly thought it was somewhat obvious. Besides, she honored not only the Yandame as her former Hokage, but she honored the Uzumaki as well. She faintly remembers interactions with his mother, Kushina, when she was younger that helped her not give up complete hope in humanity. At least not yet. You consider slicing my face open as trying to help me out? Naruto questioned. No, I consider slicing your face open as a polite warning to you that I'm not one you should piss off. I thought I made that clear multiple times already. Naruto didn't really have much to say to that. Anko got up and went to her kitchen to pour herself and Naruto a glass of water. She came back and handed him a glass, which he accepted. He was actually pretty thirsty. Anyway, I told you to come here so we can work together on making sure that we get you back on the right path. I know we don't really know each other too well, but you are my comrade. And if you're trying to throw your life away, it's my duty as a kunoichi of this village to prevent that from happening. Anko explained. So the only reason you care is because it's in your job description then? Asked Naruto, slightly offended. It seems like the one time he gets someone to care for him, it's only because it was because they had to. Kinda. Anko replied honestly. But I'll be honest, I only look out for those worthy of respect. Yes, being in the line of shinobi is an honorable and respectable thing. But I've met a lot of shinobi that wouldn't know honor and respect if it was tattooed on their ass. That's a funny visual to think about. Shut up. My point is that I know that you have a demon sealed inside of you. Not just any demon, but a demon that nearly wiped us off the map if not for a sacrifice from our previous Hokage. And you're doing a favor to our village by doing your part in that sacrifice by containing something that could not be killed. You should be respected and appreciated for doing what you're doing, because this village would not be standing if not for you. Naruto didn't know what to say. No one has ever spoken to him like that. Anko noted his silence and continued staring at him before shaking her head. I'm gonna be honest. The fact that this village does what it does to you knowing the situation almost makes me ashamed to be a kunoichi here. She sighed. She then got up and found a sake bottle sitting on her kitchen counter. She poured herself a shot and downed it with no recoil. Did you have enough to drink at the bar? She asked, holding the bottle in an offering manner. Naruto shook his head. I sure did. He politely refused. Anko nodded and sat back down. She patted the seat next to her, and Naruto hesitantly complied. Anko sighed. Look, our line of duty is rough, Naruto. Sometimes we do things as shinobi that will make us hate ourselves. Sometimes we will be put through so much that will make us wish that we were dead. But you know what keeps us strong? Our unity. How we as shinobi must look out for each other, and keep in mind that we do what we do for a better tomorrow. It is up to us working together to make sure that Konoha remains the strongest nation of all shinobi nations. And each and every one of us are crucial pieces that go towards making sure it stays that way. The purple-haired kunoichi looked him in his eyes again. And you are a crucial piece just as much as the rest of us. My job as a kunoichi is to make sure I look out for my comrades, yes, but I also deem you as someone who deserves better than what you've got. Naruto bit his lip in an attempt to somehow hold back his tears. Once the first tear left his eyes, many more followed after. Anko gave a small chuckle and sighed as Naruto buried his face in his palms and began sobbing. Great job, Anko, you made him cry. Naruto's sobs continued until he managed to choke out. You don't understand. What's there not to understand? I'm sure that I don't need to know specifics to know that you deserve. Naruto's sobbing came to a halt as she started speaking. He took a deep inhale of air before interrupting with, I murdered my own teammate. For once, Anko didn't have an immediate response. She was taken off guard. I did what only the lowest of shinobi would do. I'm a monster. I hurt and kill those around me, and I don't deserve to be in the presence of people who are trying to do good. The blonde was gripping at his hair now. Anko didn't want to pry, but something was amiss. The interrogator was a very good judge of character, and could tell that Naruto wasn't what someone would describe as a killer, and Anko surely knew some killers in her day. His duty as a shinobi may teach him how to kill, but not to an extent where he'd voluntarily murder someone of his own ranks. Wow, the poor SOB must have really pissed you off then. Anko discovered that was the wrong choice of words instantly when Naruto's head snapped toward her, and his eyes weren't blue anymore. They were as red as the blood staining his cheek. Do you think this is funny? Naruto growled. The jounin had to repress her urge to reach for her kunai. Whoa, calm down, tiger. I mean no offense. She defended. Naruto sent her one last leer before burying his face back into his palms. You do have somewhat of a temper though. She pointed out carefully. Is that the reason why you killed your teammate? Did they do something to piss you off? Anko's immediate response was the progression of his sobs. He cried harder into his hands, unable to control his emotional state at this point. She did nothing wrong, she shouldn't have been there. She should have stayed away from me. I know she was just trying to help, but oh god. Anko rubbed her chin. She was trying to make sense of the situation. Naruto, as a disclaimer, you don't have to tell me anything if you don't want to. I'm just here to lend a listening ear and a helping hand if you want it. It's like I said, you're my comrade. But you don't have to talk about it if you're not comfortable. She explained respectfully. Naruto shook his head and fought back his tears. No, it's okay. Not many people have given me a chance to hear me out. Everybody always just sees me as the demon kid. I think I'm starting to believe it myself. But you're not a demon though. Anko said simply. You don't know. Naruto sourly chuckled, confusing the person next to him. When I get mad I kind of turn into one. Despite how this was news to Anko, she wasn't too shocked. Well, the eyes turning red was a big giveaway, if I'm being honest. Naruto sighed. So now you see me as one too. Anko poured another shot of sake. It went down the hatch smoothly for her, despite how many people wouldn't have the same experience. Nah, I still stand behind what I said. Why? He asked. Anko shrugged. Because you're not a demon. You can be a brat, but I've met some demons and you're far from being anything like them. Naruto looked down at the floor. I don't know how I can agree when I murdered my own teammate in cold blood because I got too mad on the battlefield. Oh, so it was an accident then? Yeah. So why are you blaming yourself? Because Naruto's eyes began watering again. Because I loved her. Because I was supposed to protect her, not only as her comrade, but her friend. As someone who has always wanted the best for her. Oof. Thought Anko. Poor guy had a rough break. Naruto took a deep breath. Her name was Sakura. Anko started scratching her head. Sakura, was she the pink-haired medic Nin at the hospital? Yeah, Naruto responded, slightly surprised. You knew her? Well, Anko started chuckling sheepishly. Let's just say that you're not the only man who did something to earn a punch to the face. Actually, you earned a lot less than most men have. And Sakura filed a complaint against me to the Hokage a while back in regards to how many patients I was giving her and her team. Even with tears still running down his face, Naruto couldn't help but chuckle. Yeah, that sounds like her. He mumbled with a sad smile. So what exactly happened on this mission, if I may? Anko returned back to the original subject, giving him a tissue. Naruto thanked her and wiped his face of tears and blood, taking a deep breath as he tried to work past his emotions. Yesterday, Sakura and I were on a mission with the rest of our team to track down Orochimaru. Naruto noticed Anko tense up when he said that name. You okay? I'm good. Anko grunted unconvincingly. That guy and I just have history. She shook her head. Sorry, please continue. Naruto took note of that and continued. We were trying to rescue Sasuke, who was our former teammate, seeing as Orochimaru convinced him to join him. Anko nodded. I remember. He was the last living Uchiha in Konoha, and I remember the reports about him leaving sometime after Orochimaru screwed up the Chunin exams that year. The kid always gave me a weird feeling. Anko then shrugged. Most of the Uchiha did, honestly. Right. Naruto said passively, but my squad was sent on a mission to rescue him from Orochimaru, and we ended up confronting him. One thing led to another, and Orochimaru said something to me about Sasuke that made me so mad. Naruto was staring at his hands. I blacked out. I don't even remember what happened exactly. All I remember is getting mad, and then waking up to Yamato-sensei telling me that I had gone into this state where if I get really mad, the Kyuubi's chakra comes out and takes over my body somewhat. It's happened before, but this time was the worst it's ever gotten. Anko nodded, jotting this down in her mental notebook. She signaled for him to continue. I lost control of my actions. I was so mad. I didn't even know what I was doing until I woke up. He buried his face in his hands again. Well, once I woke up, I asked Yamato-sensei what happened. He told me that I grew 4 tails into the Kyuubi state. Then I looked around and asked where Sakura was. And you want to know where she was? Anko obviously knew that was a rhetorical question, but answered anyway. Dead? Naruto shook his head. No, she was next to me, dying. Bleeding. Yamato-sensei told me that I came at her like a wild animal once I looked at her. Anko nodded, noting every detail of his story. We rushed to the hospital to try and save her, but we were too late. His sobs had increased quite a bit, and it stopped him from further dialogue for a minute. I sat by her deathbed the whole time, despite the doctors telling me to leave. I kept pleading, begging for her to forgive me. It was a mistake, and I was just hoping it was a bad dream. Anko could tell he needed a minute, and she patiently let him gather his thoughts. You want to know what she said to me, right before passing on? Anko shrugged. Sure. She told me she loves me. And she forgives me. Anko shrugged again. Well, that's good, right? She understands that it was a mistake and that you didn't mean to do it. And she gave you her forgiveness for it. But I can't fucking forgive myself. Naruto burst at the top of his lungs. Anko was slightly surprised by his sudden outburst. She looked at him, and could see that his irises had turned blood red again. It's not like it was just some minor inconvenience. She's dead. Because of me. How the hell am I supposed to just forgive the fact that I failed my job as not only a shinobi and her comrade, but as her friend too? The room fell silent for a while. Well, Anko began, it's just as I said earlier. The village should be thanking you for your job as the Kyuubi's jailer. And, why would anyone thank me when? Let me finish. Anko said firmly, and from what you're telling me, this demon you have sealed in you is so strong, to the point where it can still take over your body despite how powerful that seal must be. Is that your fault? Hell no. You didn't volunteer for tribute. You didn't have any say in the matter. The fact of the matter is that you were involuntarily the village's hero, and now you have a burden placed on you to keep that spirit locked away. But it's still my fault. Naruto yelled. You said so yourself. I have a temper. I could have done more to keep that in check on the mission. Hey, I have a temper too. Anko admitted. I told you I put a lot of our villagers and fellow shinobi in the hospital for less than what you did in the bar. But did you kill any of them? I came close to it a few times, but no. So I'm just a monster then. Naruto reaffirmed. At least the people who you hurt did something to warrant it. Sakura did nothing wrong. She was my friend, and I let her down. Anko poured and downed yet another shot. She was starting to feel it now. Let me tell you something, the Snake Master started. You have to find a way to forgive yourself. Because truth of the matter is, you didn't kill Sakura. Your body was used by that demon to cause destruction, and Sakura ended up getting caught in the crosshairs. Does that suck? Of course it does, but understand that none of your actions made that happen. Orochimaru triggered you, probably knowing that it would do so, and manipulated your emotions in a way that was beneficial to him. Anko stopped for a second, seemingly deep in thought. I have history with the guy, like I said. And I know for a fact that he's very good at manipulating emotions. She took another pause and sighed. At the end of the day, Naruto, you did nothing wrong. I know it's easier said than done to think otherwise, but the facts are right in front of you. You said you don't even remember doing it. That shows you that Naruto was not the one that killed Sakura. If anyone is to blame, it'd be Orochimaru. I need you to concentrate all that frustration and guilt you're feeling and turn it into motivation to become a better shinobi. What happened already happened, Naruto. You have to work past it, and move on forward. Now I get that she was your friend and comrade, that you obviously have romantic feelings toward her. But she forgave you. I'm not saying what happened is okay, but as a fellow shinobi, we need you to keep your head on straight and remember that our primary goal is to work together and keep our home safe. She saw him staring down at the floor. She took another shot to the face. Now there was a slight blush tainting her cheeks. Naruto, I get it. I do. It's okay to grieve and take time to regulate your emotions. But you're not alone. We need you here. I know the villagers may have made it seem like you were a burden for existing with a demon in you. They're just scared. But you are every bit as important as the rest of us, and the sooner you and everyone else learn that, the easier it will be for us to coexist peacefully. Anko didn't expect his next response. Why do you care? About me? Anko didn't answer immediately. She stared off into space, seemingly having a mental debate over what she wanted to say. Naruto, I'm going to tell you something that you probably won't believe initially. It's also something that is forbidden for me to talk about, so I'm going to need you to promise to keep what I'm about to tell you between us. Naruto was reeled in, okay? Sure, I promise not to say anything. Anko inhaled. She knew that what she was about to say was technically an act of treason against the village. She knew that if anyone else were to find out about her next move, she'd be executed immediately. But she didn't care. Naruto deserved to know. The Yondaime is your father. Naruto needed a few seconds to process that. What? Man, I can get in pretty deep trouble for this. She laughed before taking another swig of alcohol, this time straight from the bottle. When the Kyuubi attacked, our Hokage, Minato Namikaze, went toe-to-toe with the huge-ass fox, sacrificed himself, and had to seal the demon in a newborn baby, which was obviously you. Isn't it a wonder how you were conveniently there, while the Hokage was in his time of need? Anko was looking at him through the corners of her eyes. Naruto's anxiety began to raise, and no, the Hokage could have asked for any orphan. If I was his son, why would it be kept a secret? He questioned. To be honest, I don't know. I'm sure it's for a good reason, like protecting your identity, seeing as the Yondaime was a phenomenal shinobi that had many enemies, she answered honestly, and what I'm saying is based off of my own speculations. I can't definitely prove this to be true, so try not to give my words too much weight, but I'm fairly certain that you are the son of the Yondaime. You even resemble him. Naruto sat there for a while, processing what she told him. He had to admit, she held a strong argument. I just can't bring myself to believe that right now. Naruto admitted. Anko nodded. If someone was to come up to her and tell her that she was the daughter of the third Hokage, she'd probably laugh at them. Well, it's like I said, I'm just going off of what I see. I can't provide physical proof, but I'm fairly certain that you're the Yondaime's son. I'm pretty sure I knew your mother too. The genin had many thoughts scrambling around in his head. He was told he was an orphan, and that his parents died in the Kyuubi attack soon after he was born, and then he found out a few years ago that the Kyuubi was sealed inside of him. And now, he was hearing that his father might be the Yondaime? That's ludicrous. Anyway, Anko started again, in response to what you asked me, I care because you not only deserve respect and appreciation, but because your parents were two people I looked up to. And honestly, if anything else, I do kind of think you're cute, she said with a smirk. She caught Naruto off guard with that one. Thanks? Naruto replied awkwardly. I wouldn't have been able to tell considering what you did to my face. Anko shrugged. Hey, cute or not, you're not getting away with disrespecting me, she said simply. I'm really sorry for that, by the way, Naruto said sincerely. Anko, now drunk, dismissed his apology with a wave of her hand. It's all under the rug now. I made sure we were even with what I did to you, she said with a grin. She then stood up off the couch. Hey, let me patch you up. We don't need that getting infected, she offered, pointing at his wound. Naruto smiled and followed her to her bathroom. He had to say, for a girl, her place wasn't as tidy as he'd expected. It wasn't as messy as his, but he was sure he saw a pair of her panties lying around as he walked to the bathroom. Take a seat, she directed, pointing at the toilet. Naruto put the lid down and did as he was told. Anko went into her medicine cabinet and searched for some gauze, tape, cloth, and wound cleaning solution. Hey, she said as she rummaged around in the cabinet. You a virgin? Huh? Naruto asked incredulously. That was among one of the last questions he'd expect her to ask. Did you lose your V-card yet? She repeated casually. No. Naruto waited for a follow-up, but one never came. Why do you ask? Just curious. Anko grabbed the item she was looking for and kneeled in front of him. She soaked the cloth and the stringent looked at him. This might sting. Naruto nodded, giving Anko the okay. As soon as the wet cloth touched his wound, he flinched. At least she gave him a disclaimer. You heal really fast. She remarked, I'm pretty sure that I cut through your facial muscles. Yet right now this wound is almost like a scratch. Yeah, being the Kyuubi's jailer has its perks. I see that. 5 minutes later, Naruto's wound was cleaned and patched up. Hey, thanks. Naruto said. Don't mention it. She replied with a nod. How are you feeling? Better. Naruto admitted, you really helped me out today. I'm glad. Anko smiled. Usually, Anko's face was pretty stoic or held a slight scowl, so for Naruto to see Anko genuinely smile for the first time was something that he wanted to see more of. I know you've got it rough. And being a shinobi is only gonna make it worse. But at the end of the day, we still have great lives. We're a proud breed, and we gotta stick together. Anko jabbed him in the chest, so buck up. Don't go around being stupid and wishing that some crazy lady in a bar would end your life. That's not the way to go. Naruto laughed. He still felt a tremendous amount of pain over Sakura's death, but Anko aided making it feel less profound. Anko saw that Naruto was in a better headspace and was happy that she did a job well done. She gestured for him to bring it in and Naruto complied. They embraced in a meaningful hug, one that Naruto felt he really needed. For the record, Anko began, just know that I am pretty drunk right now. And I am not particularly this friendly when I'm sober, I'm aware. Naruto replied with a chuckle. They released each other, and the jounin raised an eyebrow. Do you want to spend the night? She then rolled her eyes when she saw the look on his face. Not like that. Just think of it as me offering my company for the night, and nothing more. You've got quite a ways to go if you want to get that far with me, she said with a slightly mocking tone. Sure, if it's not too much trouble. I promise to be respectful, said Naruto earnestly. Anko smiled again and nodded. Am I sleeping on the couch? He politely asked. Nah, you're sleeping in my bed. Then where will you sleep? In my bed. Naruto couldn't help but blush. He wasn't in his right state of mind when he was trying to get in Anko's bed originally, so to see the proposal come to life now was something he definitely didn't expect. Anko saw that he got silent and rolled her eyes. Yes, you'll be sleeping with me in my bed. No, I'm not fucking you. And no, this doesn't mean that I'm fucking you anytime soon, she declared. We're just sleeping. Roger that. Naruto said sheepishly. What time is it? Anko looked out her window. I dunno, like 2 hours past midnight? It's that late? He asks incredulously. So why not get in the shower and get ready for bed? You smell like sweat and booze, so you're not coming in my bed smelling like that. She tells him. Do you have anything I can change into? If you like to wear lacy panties, I got the perfect deal for you. Naruto turned redder, and it was the first time that Anko laughed that night. Naruto liked the way her laugh sounded. I'm fucking with you. Just use those same boxers you have on. You didn't shit, piss, or come in them, right? Naruto did have a newfound view of Anko after what happened that night, but he knew that he would have to get used to how blatantly she spoke most of the time. The woman just had no type of filter. No, good. What about a pair of pajamas or something? I can make a stop to my house and, oh hush, just sleep in your boxers. I know you've done it before. Alright. Soon, both Anko and Naruto were properly showered and were in the bed together. All the lights were turned off, and the only source of light came from the moon that looked over the village. Good night, Anko said. She was wearing a bra, a pair of panties and sweatpants to bed, something that made Naruto uneasy. He decided not to say anything about it, but he had to admit, whether he was drunk or not, Anko looked amazing. Good night, Naruto replied. He was shirtless, since the shirt he wore smelled like armpits, something Anko wasn't happy with. All he had on was boxers, just as Anko requested. Anko laid on her side, with her back facing Naruto. Naruto rested on his back, looking up at the ceiling in deep thought. He was thankful for Anko. He couldn't remember the last time he was shown any kind of hospitality like Anko had shown him that night. Despite the alarming amount of thoughts racing throughout Naruto's mind, eventually, Naruto ended up drifting off to sleep, along with Anko, who pretty much was out cold as soon as she hit the bed. Chapter 2, Wrong Side of the Bed. Naruto slowly started to drift back into reality, due to the spears of sunlight stabbing through his eyelids. He woke up with a low groan, seeing as his head pulsing was not particularly the best thing he wanted to wake up to. He opened his eyes and tried to lift his left arm to raise it and rub his head, but he found that he couldn't. This caused him to look down, only to see wild strands of violet hair covering his chest. Confused, Naruto decided to actually take note of his surroundings. He felt a weight on the left side of his body, which was the cause of him being unable to use his arm. He was also in what he could remember to be Anko's home, despite his hangover making it difficult to even put the pieces of last night's events together to help him figure out how he got there. All these speculations helped Naruto realize the situation he was in. He was in Anko's bed, and Anko herself was asleep, nuzzled up against his left side like a little girl cuddling an oversized teddy bear. Naruto was wide awake upon fully realizing this. He started freaking out internally. seeing as he could recall her literally telling him last night that they weren't engaging in sexual relations. But upon further investigation, he saw that he was still clothed from the waist down, and Anko was still wearing her clothes from last night, despite how it made Naruto blush again, just as it did the night prior. What caused him to blush even harder than last night, though, was the fact that Anko's breasts were squished against the left side of his upper torso, giving him a phenomenal view of her cleavage. Not only that, but Anko's bra seemed to have shifted a bit, and Naruto was sure that if she turned even the slightest bit in the wrong direction, a portion of her areola would be exposed. This caused blood to rush to his lower body parts. As if that were not enough, Naruto started realizing how good it felt to have Anko's weight on top of him. Her arm was wrapped around his body, and one of her legs was resting on top of his left leg. She was still wearing her sweatpants, thankfully, but his blood flow situation was worsened when Anko adjusted in her sleep, in a way that almost felt as though she slowly humped his leg, as it was between both of hers. Poor Naruto didn't know what to do. A part of him wanted to move, but the other part of him was shockingly comfortable. Anko was not heavy nor too bony, as she was the ideal weight for someone of her height and age, and seeing as he was resting on his back, Anko was pretty much trapping him, so he couldn't move much without disturbing her sleep. But he could not find a reason to want to complain. He had even noted that Anko herself looked extremely comfortable. Anyone could tell that she was in a very deep sleep, especially with him hearing a slight snore from her with every few passing seconds. She seemed peaceful, unbothered, and looked as though she were sleeping on the most comfortable cloud in the sky. The blonde thought she looked oddly adorable, despite her messy hair, quiet snoring, and the small stream of drool leaking out of her slightly open mouth, onto his chest. She wasn't exactly in her most graceful position, but Naruto still thought she looked pretty nonetheless. Naruto lied there for at least 10 minutes, being sure not to make any sudden movements. He admired her beauty, almost like how he'd admire a sleeping puppy, or rather like a sleeping wolf. He could tell that she probably wouldn't be the most cheery person if her sleep was disturbed, and the thought of it alone intimidated him ever so slightly. Unluckily, Anko then started stirring in her sleep just as his mind started to wander over to what he'd be able to see if Anko's bra shifted in a way to his liking. Her eyes fluttered open, and she winced as the sunlight stabbed through her corneas, just as it did to him earlier. MMNGH damn it, Anko groaned lowly, holding her head. Can someone turn off the freaking sun? Naruto wasn't sure if he should have responded to that, but he decided not to. After Anko was finished spewing profanities at the early morning sunlight, she took a minute to look at her surroundings. She was still holding her head and looked up at Naruto with squinted eyes, who had already been looking down at her. Naruto? Naruto smiled awkwardly. Hi. She heard his voice and that caused her to open her eyes more. A lot more, actually. Naruto? What the hell are you? The jounin cut herself off as she remembered the events of last night. Ah shit, I must have drunk too much sake last night. I think we both did. Naruto responded, glad that she remembered what happened last night, too. It wouldn't have been the most pleasant thing for him to have to explain it to her himself. I am way too comfortable. She complained, is me laying like this bothering you? I know that me being this close to you is not something you'd probably expect, 'cause it definitely ain't something I expected. But hey, I'm already here and moving right now is gonna be a lot for me. Naruto wasn't sure how to answer that initially. However, before Naruto could come up with anything to say, Anko tried to adjust her leg and noted that something was off. And just what the heck is this? She mumbled to herself, moving her leg in the same way again, noting that her thigh was bumping into something unusually firm. Anko quickly put the pieces together and deadpanned. She sighed, Naruto, please tell me that you don't have an erection in my bed right now. Naruto blushed so hard, one would assume that all the blood in his body was sent straight to his head. Or rather both of his heads, apparently. Naruto didn't say a thing. What could he say? The proof was right there below the sheets. Anko looked at him, and the look on his face provided all the answers she needed. God, Naruto. Do you have any self-restraint at all? She asked him in a disappointed tone. Her eyes shot back downwards for just a second, and the tent that she saw under the sheets was something that shockingly made the Mitarashi raise an eyebrow. Wow, not bad, actually. Anko had to scold herself for even looking, but she had to admit, the gaki was blessed. Sorry. I can't really control something like this. Naruto quickly defended. Anko rolled her eyes, freaking virgin. She scoffed, removing herself from him. As soon as she moved, Naruto got up and faced his front side away from her to hide his dilemma. I'm sorry. Naruto apologized again. I really wasn't trying to be disrespectful. Anko got up, shrugged, readjusting her crooked brow. It's no biggie. I'm making an effort to try to feel flattered over it rather than creeped out. She then grinned. I'm sure that sleeping with a purple-haired bombshell wearing nothing but a bra and sweatpants definitely wasn't helping. Didn't you mention something about being humble last night? I have no idea what you're talking about. Naruto shook his head. Why do you dress like that anyway? Pardon? Anko asked with a raised eyebrow. Naruto scratched his head nervously. I mean, respectfully speaking, you do dress a little more revealing than most girls. I was just curious as to why that was. Anko rolled her eyes. I dress like this to give men like you a boner at any given moment's notice. Really? No. Naruto deadpanned. Anko got up and started walking to her kitchen. I dress like this because I feel most comfortable like this. That, and I know I have sex appeal. And it makes weaker men easier to manipulate when they think that you're easy. Naruto rubbed his chin. I guess, but doesn't the looks and attention bother you? Anko grabbed a few pans from her cabinet, as well as a few ingredients from the fridge. It can be annoying, sure, but as I'm sure you well know, I make sure that men don't get out of hand without punishment. Besides, I like the way I dress. I'm not walking out on the streets naked, and I do wear my trench coat most of the time, which covers 80% of my body. She sent him a look out the corner of her eyes. Does the way I dress bother you? No, not really. I was just curious. Anko proceeded to cook, not without giving him a slight eye roll beforehand. I think it bothers you more than you think, considering how it ended up causing you to grab my ass and give you an erection all within a span of 12 hours. Naruto said nothing. She had him cornered. Anko noted this, gave a low chuckle as she began preparing breakfast. Look, I'm just giving you shit. I know you're obviously attracted to me, and that's fine. Just do your best not to end up on the other side of my kunai again, and we'll be alright. Naruto nodded his head. Deal. Anko took a pause for a second. How old are you again? She asked. 17. Huh. Anko mumbled. Wouldn't have been able to guess that based off your... She cut herself off with a shake of her head. What? Nothing. Anko quickly changed the subject. Do you like your eggs sunny side up or scrambled? Naruto couldn't hide his shock. You're making me breakfast? I'm making us breakfast, yes. She nodded. Sunny side up or scrambled? Scrambled please. He answered. Thank you, don't sweat it. Just know that I expect to be treated to some food sometime in the near future, as well. It's a deal. Naruto said with a smile. Also, may I use your bathroom? Are you gonna jerk off in there? No, then you may. Naruto got up and went into his superior's bathroom to handle nature's call. After taking care of his business, and washing his hands, he decided to look in the mirror. The first thing he noticed was the bandage still on his face. The next thing he noted was the slight bags under his eyes. This made him sigh. He never really had time to self-reflect about his actions in the past few days. However, thanks to Anko, he felt more hopeful. Of course, he still felt like shit due to his last mission, but he made a vow to do everything he could to try to make up for it. He wanted to make Sakura proud from wherever she was watching him from. Before Naruto got too into his own head, the smell of seasoned eggs and pancakes was immediately brought to his attention. His stomach howled as a result, and Naruto knew that he was rather ravenous. He hadn't eaten a proper meal since before he went on his last mission. Naruto peeled off his bandage and threw it away, and was happy to see that his wound inflicted by Anko had healed completely. There was a very faint scar there, though. Not subtle enough to be unnoticeable, but not prominent enough to be seen across a room. Naruto shrugged. He deserved it. If anything, it was now a reminder of how it doesn't help anyone, including himself, to act like a jackass. He then left the bathroom, to see Anko finishing up her cooking. Hey Anko, I have a question. Fire away. She stated, not breaking her concentration on finishing up her cooking and cleaning. You mentioned that you think you knew my mother. What was she like? Anko sighed. If I'm going to be honest with you, Naruto, I'm unsure if I should answer that. I shouldn't have even told you about your parents in the first place. I was drunk, and that probably wasn't the wisest decision on my end. Naruto frowned. Well, you already told me that you think my dad was the yandere, and that you knew my mom. He stated, and you even said that they were two people that you looked up to. So what difference would it make if you told me more about them? I promise I won't tell anyone what you told me. Anko was about to protest, but he did have a fair argument. Not only that, but as she looked over at him, she saw him giving her the infamous puppy dog eyes. Bastard doesn't like to play fair. Grumbled Anko internally. Fine, Naruto. I'll tell you what I know about your parents under one circumstance. Which is? The blonde inquired, clearly perked up. Anko looked at him with a smirk. Fight me. Huh? Naruto yelped, not expecting that proposal. You heard me, said Anko, crossing her arms. Have a spar with me. I'm interested in seeing what you can do. Like right now? Like after we eat, yes? Naruto frowned. He looked at the ground inside, which was not the reaction Anko was expecting. Normally I would, but I'm kind of not in the mood to spar, considering. Anko frowned as well. She knew where he was going with that. I get that fighting may have lost its pizzazz considering what you're going through. But fighting is a large part of your job description, Naruto, she said to him, placing 2 plates of pancakes and eggs on her dining table, waving him over to eat. I know. It's just that I'm afraid to even get upset over anything at this point. I'm noticing that the seal isn't doing as good a job at holding back the Kyuubi's chakra and influence as it used to. I think that it weakens any time I use the Kyuubi's chakra, and since this most recent time was a time I ended up using more of it than I ever have, I'm afraid to do anything that can provoke it until I can get the seal checked and fixed. He explained, sitting at the other end of the table. The food smelled delectable. I understand. Anko nodded. I won't pressure you to fight if you don't want to, but I think you should do something about your seal soon since you can't run away from fighting for long. She then grinned. Besides, I really want to fight you. Naruto couldn't help but grin himself. He loved being challenged. I'd love to fight you too. I'm stronger than I look, and I want to show you what I can do when I'm not drunk in a bar. You're still just a genin. I have no doubts you're strong for a genin, but don't get your hopes up if you think you can give me a serious run for my money, said Anko as she shoved almost half a whole pancake in her mouth. Want a bet? Asked Naruto with a smirk and crossed arms. Sure. Just keep the stakes light for your sake. She responded dismissively, eating her eggs. Naruto started eating as well. If I win, you have to cook for me for 2 weeks. He said with a wide grin. The food is really good, by the way. I know, thanks. Anko smirked. And if I win, you have to clean my apartment for 2 weeks. Naruto rubbed his chin before giving Anko a toothy grin. You're on, he declared, extending his hand across the table for Anko to shake. Anko returned his grin and shook his hand firmly. Poor kid. Anko playfully sighed. You have no idea what you're getting yourself into. Don't underestimate me. Naruto responded boldly. I don't have a bad track record, even against people that outranked me. We'll see. Was all Anko said. Now shut up so we can eat. The pair continued eating in silence for a few seconds until, So are you gonna tell me about my mom? He inquired between bites. No. Naruto threw a small fit. Come on. Why not? I told you already, Gaki, said Anko after taking a sip of orange juice. I'll tell you after you fight me. I already told you I would. Naruto exclaimed. So why not tell me now? You'll get your fight regardless. Because I said so. Anko responded firmly. Besides, once your secret goes out, I want to be able to say I kicked the 4th Hokage's son's ass. She ended with a smirk. First of all, you're not gonna kick my ass, said Naruto, standing up. Second of all, what do you mean once my secret goes out? Do you think I'm gonna tell someone? Don't know. Anko said honestly with yet another shrug. I just know it's going to come out somehow, one way or another. I can't be the only person that knows. Naruto didn't have a response. It made him wonder just how many people were keeping this secret from him. Like Tsunade. Or Kakashi. Or Jiraiya. Anko saw the look on his face and wanted to put her foot in her mouth. Ugh, Naruto, don't think too much about it. And don't do anything crazy like confront someone about it. You promised me you'd keep things between us. Naruto wanted to say that the thought of confronting someone didn't even cross his mind, but he knew that would be a downright lie. I know, but I deserved to know a long time ago. Naruto clenched his fist. I just don't know why these secrets are being kept from me like this. From people I really look up to. I'm sure it's for a reason, Naruto. Anko responded, finishing up her plate, but as I said, don't think too much about it. It's only gonna frustrate you more and more. And if you want me around and not beheaded for telling you a village-wide secret where death is a punishment by law, you'd work on keeping what you know between us until further notice. This made Naruto back down a bit, and caused him to think for a second. What if I just don't tell them that you told me? Naruto asked. To his shock, Anko shook her head. Look, Naruto, I work in the torture and interrogation portion of our ranks, and a lot of that deals with criminals and people that break laws. I also deal closely with the council and government of our village, and I know for a solid fact that if you were to even mention that you know anything of your parents to the wrong person, the ANBU will send you off to Inoichi, who is tied closely with my department, and have him search through your memory banks to find out how exactly the information got brought about to you, Anko explained, shocking the blonde before her. Bullshit. Naruto crossed his arms. Bachan wouldn't let that happen. If you're referring to our lovely big-boobed Hokage, then you're sadly mistaken. Anko sighed. I know you're close with the Hokage, and she likely wouldn't approve of the ANBU doing what I just told you. She looked him dead in the eyes, but trust me, Naruto, the Hokage is not the only person who contributes to how the village runs. A Hokage does not and cannot run a village on their own. Naruto looked down at the ground, silent. After a suspenseful pause, Naruto sighed. All right. I'll try not to think about it. And you won't tell anyone, right? Right. Let me hear you say it. Naruto sighed again. I won't tell anyone. Promise? Yes. Naruto said, irritated. I promise I won't tell anyone. He's gonna tell someone. Anko sighed internally. Good. An hour or so later, Naruto left Anko's house. He thanked her for her hospitality, and everything she'd done for him between that day and the night prior. Anko responded as she usually would, and told him to not think much of it. He vowed to show appreciation towards her actions nonetheless, and made a mental note to treat Anko out to a bowl of ichiraku sometime in the near future. After leaving the Jounin's home, Naruto tried to figure out what to do to occupy his time. He usually would decide to either stop by ichiraku's or train at a time like this. However, Naruto was stuffed after eating Anko's food, and for some reason, he just didn't feel like training. He thought about managing to find Jiraiya and get him to do something about his weakening seal. However, the only person that would know of his location is Tsunade. Naruto decided against this for now, simply because he hadn't spoken to Tsunade since she assigned him to his most recent mission. Even when he returned, he made enough of an effort to avoid her presence, as he was not sure how to bring about the news to her in regards to how Sakura actually died. Yamato had reluctantly agreed to keep what happened on that mission between each other, and went ahead to report to Tsunade that Sakura had perished at the hands of Orochimaru. With all that said and done, Naruto found it hard to even put himself in her presence. Eventually she would find out the truth, whether he'd tell her or if she found out through another source somehow, but Naruto did not feel ready to face that obstacle just yet. After thinking about this, Naruto noted his stress levels increasing rapidly. As a result, Naruto decided what he wanted to do with his day: visit the local hot springs and just relax. It was a healthy way to work out his stress, as opposed to drinking like he had the night prior. The Jinchuriki made his way over to the hot springs and paid the fee for a 2-hour dip. He showered prior in a room by the entrance to the springs and then made his way over to the steamy area. The area was empty, just as Naruto wanted it to be. Smiling to himself, he took a dip into the hot spring, allowing the hot water to melt away his stresses and anxieties. He sighed once he was shoulder deep in the water, leaning up against the edge of the spring, and closed his eyes to allow his body to take a break from his daily activities. Soon enough, Naruto ended up getting so immersed in his meditation, eventually he was no longer fully conscious. Despite him waking up just a few hours prior, he gave in to the thought of taking a quick relaxing nap. With only his head outside of the water, Naruto was lightly snoring, as if the hot springs had rocked him to sleep like a toddler. By the time 30 minutes had passed after he had drifted off, however, a certain character appeared behind his sleeping form. Chapter 3, The Rolling Scroll. All around Naruto was the echo of the eerie sound of dripping water in a large spacious room. He could feel himself standing ankle-deep in water, and the air around him seemed foul, not particularly in a sense of smell, but in a way that he could feel in his soul. It was a feeling of very sinister chakra, and Naruto was all too familiar with it. Naruto opened his eyes, only to look at the giant bars of a locked chamber with a seal placed on it. On the inside of the cage was complete darkness. That is, until 2 glowing eyes emerged from the darkness, staring directly at the blonde Jinchuriki. The eyes glowed within the shadows like a glow stick, and were red in color. Naruto stared back at the eyes looking at him, grimacing as he did so. "Why did you call me here?" Naruto asked the creature behind the bars. The eyes seemed to have squinted slightly, and eerie laughter was heard, echoing around in the extremely spacious room they were in. One would expect the voice to be deep and boisterous, however, the voice was actually light and feminine. Kyubi no Yoko stepped forward in front of the bars of the cage, exposing herself from the shadows. Contrary to the form she took prior to being sealed inside the boy before her, her current form was more humanistic. She stood to be about 3 inches taller than Naruto, which was well above average for most human women. Her expression exhibited a very dark demeanor, and her red eyes that glowed much like the eyes of a fully activated Sharingan made her seem even more sinister. Her hair was bright orange, much like the fur of a fox, and was long enough to reach down to the middle of her back. Some of the strands dangled in front of her face freely, almost like half-open blinds that draped in front of a window. Despite how sinister the demon looked, most would agree that her facial features were attractive, yet intimidating. She had the looks of a 30-something-year-old woman, despite how she'd been around for thousands of years. Her frame was nothing short of voluptuous, much like Anko's, and the slim-fitting red kimono she wore hugged every curve she had. The kimono ended mid-thigh, exposing her long and fair-skinned legs. The fingers on her hands were long, and her razor-sharp nails that were black in color only made them look longer. Overall, anyone would agree that the demon looked attractive, but anyone would also agree that she didn't seem completely human. She was a demon, after all, one that looked as though she'd rip into anyone she wanted to harm with ease. The Kyubi gave Naruto a dark grin, exposing her elongated canine teeth, for no particular reason. "I do get lonely in here from time to time, so I could use the company." The nine-tailed fox's voice was womanly, but had an eerily demonic undertone to it. Naruto grimaced at the evil being and crossed his arms. "The last place I'd want to be is near you. You killed my friend." Kyubi's grin grew in size somewhat. "It's not my fault she provided as an easy target. If anything, she had it coming for a long time. I couldn't tell you how often I had to use my chakra to heal the wounds she inflicted on you." The muscles in Naruto's jaw began to tighten. "She wasn't the enemy. I only use your power to fight Orochimaru, not my allies. Orochimaru will get what's coming to him in due time. I still have not forgotten how he suppressed my chakra during your Chunin exams." The demoness then licked her lips thirstily. "As for your teammate, that was the most freedom I've gotten since I've been sealed by that damned Hokage. Despite how your body was too weak for me to kill Orochimaru, I went for the closest available target while I still had that much control, and it felt great to have finally killed. It is not something I've felt for a long time." As much as Kyubi's words angered Naruto, he couldn't help but feel a chill run up his spine upon hearing how enthusiastic she was about killing. It was almost as if she got off on it. Was this what it meant to be a demon? To get a kick out of murder and destruction? Naruto's anger began to rise enough to a point where his breathing became heavy, and his fists began to clench up as hard as his body would allow. You're sick. What do you gain out of merciless killing anyway?" The demoness began to chuckle sinfully. She stepped forward, revealing the 9 large foxtails flailing tranquilly behind her. "Joy. Satisfaction. Pleasure. When you use my power, do you not feel how good it feels to inflict harm onto others? Did it not feel good to attack that cursed Uchiha when you fought him 3 years ago?" Naruto grunted, unable to say anything. Despite how much he didn't want her to be right, he knew she was. Whenever he used her power, it made him insatiable. When he and Sasuke last fought, it felt good to have been putting his friend in his place at some points of the fight despite how much he did not want to admit it. The very first time he used it in the Land of Waves where he fought on what is now known as the Great Naruto Bridge, he declared that he was going to kill Haku, and what was scarier was that he really meant it. Despite him not actually killing him, Naruto has never wished to kill anyone or anything. This demon's chakra, it was evil, yet addictive. The Kyuubi noted his hesitation and grinned. I know you know that I'm right. If only that last attack had landed, it would have been very fulfilling to have killed an Uchiha despite me being sealed inside you. One of these days, I'll eradicate any remaining Uchiha on this earth. I swear it. Naruto looked at the ground, clenching his fists. Before looking back at the Kyuubi, I'm not going to use your power anymore. The female demon looked at Naruto with an amused expression, before lowly chuckling. Then, gradually, her laughter began to bellow out into the large spacious room she was in loudly, echoing all around them. That must be a joke, she stated after her howling died down. The only reason you've ever gotten as far as you have in your pathetic shinobi career was because you relied on my power. Without me, you're nothing. Without me, you'd have died a long time ago. You do realize that, right? Naruto looked down. It's true that without you, I probably wouldn't be around anymore. You have saved my life countless times, even in situations where most people wouldn't have made it. Kyuubi grinned triumphantly. I'm glad that you. But Naruto continued, holding a grin of his own, without me, you probably would be dead, too. If you hadn't gotten sealed inside someone as gutsy and stubborn as me, you probably would have died sealed inside someone who doesn't have what it takes to take on the path of a shinobi. This silenced the demoness for a few seconds. She then scoffed at him dismissively. Fool. Do you really think that? I do. Naruto said confidently. It's like I said 3 years ago, I'm your jailer. And not everyone has what it takes to keep you in check like I do. The nine-tailed fox rolled her eyes. You're clearly deluded. You do not, by any means, keep me in check. I challenge you to remove this seal and say that again. Nice try. Naruto scoffed. You're not getting free anytime soon. The Kyuubi then smirked devilishly, granting Naruto a light but dark chuckle. We shall see about that, Naruto-kun. Naruto. The conversation Naruto was having with his demon tenant in his own mindscape was interrupted when he felt someone shaking him by his shoulder. Naruto opened his eyes and turned around, only to be face to face with his replacement sensei while Kakashi was out of commission. Ga! Naruto screeched, jumping back deeper into the onsen, splashing the jounin in the process. Yamato's face was closer to him than he'd originally anticipated, nevertheless considering how Naruto wasn't expecting to be snuck up on in the first place. Yamato's face deadpanned as water from the hot springs dripped off of his face and clothing. You didn't have to splash me. You didn't have to scare the crap out of me, refuted Naruto, trying to calm his pounding heart. God, your face freaks me out. Yamato furrowed his brows. What was that? Nothing. Naruto sighed. So what's up, Yamato-sensei? The wood-style user shook his head. The Hokage summoned you. She wishes to talk with you. Naruto looked at Yamato and immediately frowned. Part of the reason why he chose to go to the onsen was to avoid Tsunade. After all, he technically lied to her, seeing as she doesn't know the whole truth as to the cause of Sakura's untimely death. Or does she? Do you know what she wants to talk about exactly? Asked Naruto with a tone and expression that inquired if it were about his most recent mission. Yamato huffed. She did say that it was in regards to the spy mission. But if you're wondering, I didn't mention anything to her about Sakura, nor did she mention her herself. I don't know exactly what it is she summoned us for. Naruto looked down at the ground momentarily before meeting Yamato's gaze again. Yamato-sensei, if it's about what I think it's about, then I don't want you getting in trouble because of what I asked of you, said Naruto cheerlessly. I realized that it wasn't right for me to ask you to lie to the Hokage for me. I was scared and desperate, but if there are consequences I have to face, then I have to face them on my own, without dragging people down with me. Yamato frowned and looked at his subordinate with empathy. Yamato was undoubtedly uncomfortable with going on with what can be considered an act of treason, but did it anyway for Naruto's sake. He was aware that it may not have been the smartest or most ethical decision, but chose to do what he could for Naruto considering the circumstances. I appreciate the nobility, Naruto. But your secret's safe with me, and just know that I chose to do what I did in an effort to look out for you. You're my comrade, and I know you meant no harm. Yamato then sighed. But I do encourage you to come clean eventually. It would be better for the Hokage to hear it from you than anyone else. I don't know how she would handle the news, but trust me when I say that no matter the outcome, it'd be much worse if she found out through another source at this point. Naruto nodded slowly. He knew Yamato was right. Hence why he wanted to drag it out as long as he could to begin with. Alright, I hear you. Let's go. In the Hokage's office sat Tsunade, the 5th Hokage of Konohagakure. Standing beside her was her right-hand woman, Shizen, who held Tun-Tun protectively in her arms. Shizen was aiding Tsunade in the process of reading and signing paperwork, which was every Hokage's dreaded responsibility. Their concentration on the paperwork was then interrupted by a knock coming from the door. Enter. Tsunade called out. Naruto and Yamato both emerged into the room a second later. Naruto had hesitated to enter, attempting to think of any last-minute alibis that could aid him in getting out of the situation, despite his earlier nobility. But he inevitably forced himself into the room and immediately looked at Tsunade to gauge her facial expression to see what mood she was in. From what he could see, she was not angry. However, she didn't seem particularly happy either. She was unreadable, and that alone began to make Naruto's anxiety skyrocket. Before Tsunade could say anything, Kakashi Hatake entered in behind Yamato and Naruto. The silver-haired jounin had fully recovered from the hospital, seeing as he had his favorite little orange book in his hands as he walked in. Tsunade looked at the three shinobi. Ah, good, you all are here. She then looked at Kakashi. You're reading Jiraiya's smut again, so I'm assuming you're fully recovered. The son of the White Fang smiled with his eyes in response to her annoyed tone. Yup. After a brief eye roll, Tsunade looked over at Naruto, who jumped internally once her eyes fell on him. To his surprise, she looked at him with a look of genuine concern. You holding up okay, Naruto-kun? She spoke to him in a way that a mother would talk to her hurt son. Naruto was touched by this, and was relieved, seeing as that was a sign that she didn't find out exactly what happened on his mission. But it still brought him discomfort to know that he still had to come clean, and it made it difficult for him to look her in the eyes. Why yeah. I'm fine. Awkwardly responded Naruto. Tsunade made a mental note of his response, but simply nodded and didn't prod any further. I guess you all are wondering why I summoned you here. She began to the remaining members of Squad 7. You mentioned that it had to do with the mission a few days ago, correct? Asked Kakashi, putting away his book. Naruto was now curious. If she didn't know the truth, then what could she want to tell them? It does. Nodded Tsunade. Before giving out a huff of air, Sai has been reported dead. There was a brief silence in the room, as none of the other shinobi were prepared to hear such news. A small grunt from Tuntun seemed to break the silence after a while. Tsunade took their lack of a response as demands for elaboration. After sending out ANBU to pick up after the trail to Orochimaru's hideout, they found that Orochimaru had left and abandoned it by the time they got there. After searching the hideout, they stumbled across Sai's body, and after inspecting his wounds, they found that he was finished off with a technique that you, Kakashi, should be familiar with, the Chidori. Naruto's and Yamato's eyes opened wide in shock, while Kakashi's exposed eye squinted. So Sasuke killed one of our ranks then? Asked Kakashi with a slightly frustrated tone. He was beginning to gain feelings of regret to have ever taught Sasuke that technique. Tsunade nodded. It seems that way. But there's a catch. She looked at Yamato. You reported that Sai joined up with Orochimaru and departed with him after you and Naruto fought with him, correct? Yamato nodded. Yes, my wood clone saw everything. Then why would Sasuke turn around and kill Sai if they were on the same side? Asked Kakashi. That's the catch. Answered Tsunade. After informing Danzo that one of his most trusted root ops had sided with the enemy, he confessed to me that he sent Sai out on a separate mission without informing me. A mission to find Sasuke Uchiha and kill him after making an illegitimate proposal to join Orochimaru's efforts in destroying the leaf. Yamato rubbed his chin. So Sai was actually following Danzo's orders, not turning his back on the leaf. He then crossed his arms. Why wouldn't Danzo inform you of these plans? Because he's much like Orochimaru in the sense that he's very reptile-like. Tsunade grunted. First off, he knows that I wouldn't approve. And he's been known to do things behind my back like this, and whenever I bring it up to the council, his defense of doing it in the name of the village gets him out of the crosshairs every time. The most punishment he's ever gotten from stunts like these was a slight slap on the wrists. Sneaky bastard. Spat Tsunade. Are you saying that Danzo should not be trusted? Inquired Kakashi. He was a friend of the third, after all. Something is up with him, and I can't particularly point out what it is right now, so I won't make that bold of a claim. All I'm saying is that he's done some things that have rubbed me the wrong way. And I'm gonna get to the bottom of it one way or another, she stated, mumbling the last sentence to herself more so than anyone else in the room. Shaking her head to clear those bothersome thoughts for another time, Tsunade's eyes fell on Naruto once again, who inwardly panicked a bit in response. Naruto, you're unusually quiet. Tsunade pointed out, acknowledging how normally Naruto would have at least a short list of somethings to say in response to the news brought to him. Naruto's eyes wandered around the room as he tried to think of something to say. Kakashi glimpsed at him. I think he just has a lot to take in. You know, considering. Naruto mentally thanked Kakashi for speaking up for him. Tsunade nodded, accepting Kakashi's statement. That's understandable. Feel free to come in and talk to me anytime if you need to get some things off your mind, Naruto-kun. I know you're dealing with a lot right now. Thank you, Tsunade-sama. Was all Naruto responded with. The leader of Konoha noted his lack of use of her notorious nickname Bachan, but chose not to prod again. She simply looked at Shizen, who met her gaze with a sad one, before sighing. In any case, considering the circumstances, I will give Squad 7 a week off duty. Sakura's funeral will be held 2 days from now, and Sai's will be held the day after. I hope that everyone will be attending. Naruto felt a lump beginning to form in his throat. It took quite a bit of effort to not have a small breakdown right in front of everybody. That is all I have to inform you of. Take advantage of the days off to mourn and recover. You all are dismissed. Yamato and Kakashi both nodded and proceeded out of the room. Naruto fell in behind them both, and just as he was 1 foot out the door, Tsunade called his name, stopping him in his tracks. Yes, Tsunade-sama? He answered, peeking past the door to look at her. Tsunade looked at him with a sad smile. Keep your chin up, Naruto. Everything will be okay. Naruto looked down at the floor, before nodding and stepping out of the room, closing the door behind him. Shizen frowned. He's going through a lot. I can only imagine. Tsunade responded with a sigh. I hope he'll be okay. I owe that brat a lot, unfortunately. I'll do everything I can to make sure he will be. Naruto stepped out of the front entrance of the Hokage Tower to see Kakashi sitting there in front of the border, who was apparently waiting for him. Yo, Naruto. We have to talk, stated Kakashi. The way he phrased it began to make Naruto worry that Yamato may have told Kakashi what happened, considering how he did technically only asked him to withhold the information from Tsunade more than anyone else. Okay, what's up? Well, it's a number of things, actually. Maybe it'd be best if we spoke about it over at Training Ground 7. He offered. Naruto hesitantly nodded and shined over to the broad and open location. Kakashi sat on a tree stump and directed Naruto to sit on the one across from him. Naruto's anxiety began to flare up for the umpteenth time that day. I won't beat around the bush here, Naruto. Yamato informed me of what happened on the mission. He did, huh? Naruto sighed. I didn't mean to do it, it just happened. I understand, Naruto. There's not much to apologize for. It's not like you have complete control over the Kyuubi, so try not to beat yourself up over it. How can I not? Asked Naruto. I not only cost us the mission, but my actions lead to the death of not only one of my teammates, but probably two now, and if we include Sasuke, it'll probably be 3 at this rate. Kakashi raised an eyebrow. Now I wouldn't go that far, Naruto. Don't place such a heavy burden on yourself. Sai and Sakura both put their lives on the line for their village on that mission just as they would in any other mission. Naruto wanted to agree with Kakashi, but he just couldn't. Yes, but I'm sure Sakura didn't plan to go on that mission, only to have an ally turn on her. Kakashi's eyebrow was still raised. From the intel that was brought to me, Sakura had fallen before Sai sided with Orochimaru. So how could that be the case? I'm not talking about Sai. I'm talking about me, said Naruto. The Sharingan bearer made his rising confusion known. So you were the one who sided with Orochimaru? What? No, you're losing me here, Naruto. Kakashi stated, scratching his head. What exactly is it that you're saying? I was saying that it's hard for me to not feel like things are my fault when I'm the reason Sakura died. I know that technically it was the Kyuubi. But something then dawned on Naruto. Wait, didn't Yamato tell you? All Yamato told me was that you grew 4 tails into your Kyuubi state, which is the worst it's ever gotten. So what's all this about Sakura's death being your fault? I was told that Orochimaru was the one that attacked her. Naruto wanted to smack himself. Due to his lingering guilt over the situation, he exposed the truth to Kakashi inadvertently. He felt he should have had more faith that Yamato wouldn't just tell anybody without consulting him first. Not that Yamato really owed him that much, regardless, but still. The blonde felt that it was far too late to back out of the discussion now, and ultimately decided to come clean all the way to Kakashi. Orochimaru didn't attack Sakura, I did. Or at least I did while I was in that state. I don't recall having any control or memories of my actions at that point, but Yamato saw everything and did what he could to stop me. But, Naruto shook his head. Today was becoming a pretty emotionally exhausting day for him, to say the least. I asked Yamato to keep things between us. And I thought when you said he told you everything, you meant that he told you that too, but I guess I kind of exposed myself on this one. Naruto ended with a dry chuckle. Kakashi allowed this information to process before crossing his arms. Well, that certainly makes more sense. I was wondering why Orochimaru would go after Sakura when you're usually the one who chooses to be on the front lines. Naruto said nothing. In any case, the silver-haired Jounin started with a sigh, standing up. I'm not going to blame you for any of that. It's not your fault that the Kyuubi's chakra broke out so much. I can only imagine how bad it could have been if Yamato wasn't there to yield the Kyuubi's influence on you. So don't beat yourself up. I don't see how that's possible. Like I said before, I cost us the mission. No matter how you look at it, I'm tied to the cause of Sakura's death. And if we hadn't had to retreat due to what I did, we probably could have saved Sai, even if it is that Danzo guy's fault initially. Naruto put his face in his palms. That was easily the worst day of my life, and what makes it worse is that I can't even remember everything. Kakashi stared at Naruto as he sobbed for a while before looking towards the sky. The Jounin closed his eyes and sighed before walking over to Naruto, placing a comforting hand on his shoulder. Hey! Kakashi called for his attention. I know how you feel more than you think. Naruto sniffled. You do? Kakashi nodded. Yeah? One of these days we'll go out for a drink and I'll tell you something that I don't speak with anyone about. All I'll tell you now is that I can sympathize with you. And I need you to trust me when I tell you that what happened wasn't your fault. You are not a bad person, Naruto. Naruto nodded and thanked him for his endearing words. He was also curious about what it was Kakashi was talking about, and made a note to definitely accept his drinking offer whenever he chose to propose it. Thanks, sensei, said Naruto, wiping his tears. Kakashi smiled with his eyes. Don't mention it. You have the next week off, so definitely use that time to get your mind together. Mourn if you have to, and I definitely encourage you to tell Tsunade what you know if you haven't already. Naruto nodded. I know Yamato-sensei told me the same thing not too long ago. Kakashi nodded as well and chose to change the subject. Well, as interesting as this conversation has been, I'll get back to where I originally left off. Seeing as the Kyuubi's influence is growing stronger each time you use it, I think at some point we should use the week that we have to train. I was doing some thinking while in the hospital, and I devised a new training method where you can create your own original jutsu. Naruto was about to refuse the offer of training as he did with Anko, until he heard the mention of creating his own original jutsu. Even despite Naruto's current mental block, he couldn't turn down an offer at learning something cool. Original jutsu? Naruto repeated, his facing lighting up slightly. Kakashi grinned. It felt as though he just told the child that he had candy waiting for him. Yup, an original jutsu. But there are some measures we have to take beforehand. Naruto always hated how Kakashi seemed to enjoy exciting him with something, only to bring up something not so exciting that he had to do prior. Okay, like what? Well, I wasn't going to say this originally, but considering what you told me, I think it would be best if we do something about the seal holding the Kyuubi. From what I can tell, your seal weakens every time you use the Kyuubi's powers, and we need to make sure that seal stays intact for as long as possible before we engage in anything that can rouse that chakra. Nothing against you, but if that chakra is getting as out of hand as it has been recently, then we have to ensure that you and everyone around you will be safe. Naruto nodded, seeing as that was something he wanted to look into himself already. Yeah, I know. I actually plan to find Erosen soon so he can try to do something about it. Good. I'm glad to see that we're on the same page, said Kakashi. We can still get started on some of the preliminary training, however, since it won't be very intense. So if you're available, come meet me here tomorrow morning, and I'll have a little something ready for you. Sounds good, Naruto said with a small smile. Kakashi responded with his usual happy expression of the eyes. Chapter 4 Eye on the Prize. In the northwestern region of Konoha, Anko Mitarashi waited outside of the front door to an apartment square. She tapped her foot onto the hardwood floors impatiently with her arms crossed, before deciding to bang on the door again. God, what's taking you so long? Hurry up already, she barked through the door. I'll be right there. She heard the slightly frazzled voice of her friend on the other side of the door. Anko rolled her eyes and leaned against the wall across from the door, using this time to daydream about anything other than food, though she was failing miserably. Soon enough, the door to the apartment opened, revealing Anko's good friend, Kurenai Yehi. She wore her normal attire, though her hair wasn't what would be considered perfectly combed. Behind her emerged her lover, Asuma Saratobi, who wore nothing but boxers and an inside-out t-shirt. They mischievously whispered to each other before pecking each other on the lips as a sweet goodbye. Kurenai stepped into the apartment hallway and closed the door behind her, giving her friend a coy smile. Sorry, Anko, I guess I lost track of time, she apologized. Anko shook her head. I'm sure you did. Let's just hurry up and go before they close. Kurenai giggled at her friend and walked with her out of the apartment building. Somebody's cranky. You're damn right I'm cranky, Anko grunted. We planned this 2 weeks ago, and today is not a day where I can go without Dango. I swear, if they close before we get there, that's your ass, Kurenai. The red-eyed Jounin rolled her eyes with a grin on her face. Sorry, geez. I didn't realize the sun was starting to set already. Yeah, because you were too busy getting pinned down by Mr. Chin Strap in there. That's inappropriate, Anko, Kurenai said with a playful sigh. But am I wrong? Kurenai said nothing. That's what I thought. Anko grunted with a shake of her head. Kurenai could only laugh, despite her slight embarrassment. Hey, sue me for wanting to enjoy the relationship I have with someone I love. I don't care if your horny little self wishes to ride Asuma's off into the sunset. Which, by the way, is clearly something you're already working on. All I'm saying is that you should manage your time better. Anko crossed her arms, pouting at the ground. We rarely get to hang out like we used to. At this, Kurenai gave her a sad smile. I know, Anko. You're still my best friend. Our schedules just don't sync up like they used to. I've had the same consistent schedule that I've had for years, Kurenai. Anko said. You're the one with the changes? Don't get me wrong. It puts a smile on my face to know that you're getting some good love and you're just one of my only friends. And I'm finding it harder and harder for us to hang out lately. Kurenai had to admit, she genuinely felt bad. It had been over 2 months since the friendly pair hung out with one another. They used to hang out every other day. It was almost a requirement for shinobi to seek out leisure and have fun while not on duty, considering the stresses that come with the job. But lately, Kurenai had been too caught up dating Asuma to consistently follow up on plans with the purple-haired Jounin, much to her obvious frustration. I understand your viewpoint, Anko. I'll definitely try to do better about us hanging out. I'm holding you to that, Anko declared. Just then, Anko arrived at her favorite restaurant that served Konoha's best dumplings and soups. Any amount of mild frustration with Kurenai was whisked away once the smell of good food graced her nose. Good news, Kurenai. I won't be kicking your ass today, the snake summoner said with closed eyes, her nose in the air, and a smile on her face. Kurenai rolled her eyes playfully to her empty threat. You never do anyway. About 30 minutes later, Anko and Kurenai had spent time catching up inside the restaurant, though Kurenai was forced to do most of the talking since Anko was very busy shoving dango skewers in her mouth. Kurenai had ordered an exotic tea, as she was not very hungry, while Anko ordered an abundance of Mitarashi dango and sweet bean soup, as usual. Anko fell back into her chair and patted her bulging stomach. Oh yeah, a fed Anko is a happy Anko, and a hungry Anko is a force to be reckoned with. Kurenai mocked with her chin in her palm. I'm glad that you're tame now, but you're paying the bill this time. Anko burped just as her tab came to the table. Yeah, I was going to anyway. Kurenai watched as Anko laid out the bills onto the receipt for the server to take away. An idea popped into her head as she recalled their conversation on the way to the restaurant. Hey, Kurenai called, I'm really glad we found time to hang out. You're always good company to have. Anko looked at Kurenai through the corner of her eyes. What are you up to? Kurenai's features twisted into a confused and slightly offended expression, though she tried to hide her smile as best as she could. What do you mean? You always try to butter me up before trying to convince me to do something or get a point across, accused Anko. Kurenai shook her head. I think the TI department has you paranoid. The TI department trained me to know human psychology and social patterns down to an art form. Anko stated, not backing down. What is it that you want to say to me, Kurenai? Kurenai laughed, knowing that it wouldn't be easy to get one over on one of the best interrogators in Fire Country. Well, I was going to tell you that I really do enjoy hanging with you, Anko. But it's not going to be as easy for me to do so as it used to. Yeah, I know. Anko said matter-of-factly, because you're dating Asuma? I was giving you shit about it earlier, remember? Kurenai nodded, twiddling her fingers together. Yeah, but that's not exactly what I mean. Anko squinted her eyes at her friend as a cue for her to get to the point. Aha, I'm pregnant. Anko's eyes widened. The air between them was quiet for quite a while. Are you serious? Exclaimed Anko. Kurenai modestly nodded and Anko rushed out her chair to hug her friend. Kurenai hugged back, happy that she got a positive reaction out of her. Congratulations, Kurenai, said Anko genuinely as she sat back into her chair. I'm really happy for you, truly. Kurenai smiled. Thank you, Anko. I knew for about a week now, and I decided to finally tell Asuma the news today. He's just as excited as I am, Kurenai said happily. Anko nodded and looked off in the distance momentarily. She realized that was probably why she took so long to come out and hang out with her. She was happy, and was sharing that happiness with her lover. Now she's on her way to bringing new life into the world, and Anko couldn't blame her for wanting that for herself. Anko gave a short snort. So you're pregnant, huh? I can't imagine you dealing with all those hormonal patterns that pregnancy comes with when you're already an emotional wreck. Hey, I am not that emotional, Kurenai said with a slightly offended but playful tone. When we were chunin, you cried to me for an hour because you accidentally killed a ladybug during training. Anko stated flatly. We were teenagers. And that ladybug's life is no more important than ours, Kurenai defended. Anko shook her head. I'll agree to that the next time I see a ladybug defend us during an invasion. She replied sarcastically. Anyway, I really am happy for you. Don't worry about me and start your family. I'll find something to do in my spare time. Kurenai then gave her a slightly mischievous grin, which was something Anko didn't necessarily enjoy. I know I've said this before, but why not try putting yourself back on the market again? Asked Kurenai. No, was Anko's simple answer. Come on, why not? Because it's like I told you, I don't have a desire to be with someone. I do better when I'm flying solo, stated Anko. Besides, what man do you think can put up with my personality? You have a great personality, encouraged Kurenai. That's not an answer to the question, Kurenai, said Anko passively. What about Kakashi? If anyone can take your attitude in stride, it'd be him. Anko sneered. Nah, he's too boring. Besides, I barked up that tree when we first became jounin. I think he might be into men. Kurenai laughed. I don't think so. You say that about every guy that isn't interested in you. The jounin with the trench coat rolled her eyes. Yeah, well then it just eludes back to the question of what kind of man will be interested in me. I'm not particularly the sweetest grape out of the bunch, you know, she said with a short shrug. You tell me about dozens of men all the time that try to get with you, but you turn them down, said Kurenai. Yeah, but all those men are either weird creeps or weak. And I admit that the bar is set pretty high, but it's for a reason. A shinobi hanging around in the restaurant mustered up the courage to approach the pair and looked at Anko with a smirk. Pardon me, ladies, I would just like to introduce myself. I'm walking. Pardon? Anko looked at the man through the corner of her eyes. You're walking. You're walking. Like walking away. Right now. The man frowned and raised an eyebrow. That's a bit harsh, don't you th? Excuse me, Mr. Walking, why aren't your feet moving yet? Hey, if you're not gone in the next 3 seconds, bad things will have a significant chance of happening to you. I'd get moving if I were you. The poor man decided to just cut his losses and leave Anko alone. Not before murmuring a few terms to describe Anko that would definitely not sit well with her if he wasn't saying it under his breath. Kurenai shook her head. He could have been the one. You didn't have to be that rude to him. Anko crossed her legs, as well as her arms. I don't appreciate guys who just walk up to me while I'm clearly in the middle of a conversation. His poor timing was his downfall from the very beginning. Then how would you like men to approach you? That's the thing. I wouldn't want them approaching me at all. Anko said before shaking her head. Kurenai, I am not afraid of dying alone. My tombstone could literally say here lies Anko, the loneliest bitch in Konoha, and I'd be okay with it. I don't need anyone, and I'm not looking for anything in someone. All I want is a friend I can grab lunch or a drink with every so often. Kurenai shook her head. Anko always was a stubborn one. I hear you, Anko. Although, Kurenai figured she'd give it one last shot. I just think, if nothing else, you could use someone who could take the edge off for you, if you catch my drift. The only thing that takes the edge off for me is food. Anko refuted flatly. Besides, I have plenty of things in my dresser that can do that for me. All in different sizes and shapes, too. Kurenai chuckled and crossed her arms, giving her a sly look. But you know it's not like the real thing. Me going solo is much better than the real thing, trust me. Anko scoffed. Men are disappointing beings in pretty much every aspect, especially in the bedroom. At this, Kurenai looked off with a slightly dazed expression, not when it's the right one. Anko leered at Kurenai with crossed arms, doing what she could to not feel even the slightest bit of envy. As I said, I'm happy for you. I just don't think it's in the stars for me. Kurenai nodded at her dismissive response, deciding to leave it alone for now. But Kurenai was Anko's friend, and she's gotten to know Anko more than anyone else in Konoha could ever manage to know her. And Kurenai could tell that Anko was slightly envious of her relationship with Asuma because deep down she wanted something like it for herself, even if she didn't want to admit it. If you insist, Mitarashi-san, said Kurenai with a sarcastic tone. After finishing up at the restaurant, Anko and Kurenai went their own separate ways, as Kurenai had more plans with Asuma to celebrate Kurenai's pregnancy. Anko, figuring she was out of things to do today, decided it'd be in her best interest to get some training in. It had been a while, and she figured she could always sharpen up on her aim with target practice. Besides, her conversation with Kurenai was beginning to make Anko think too much about certain matters, and Anko was always determined to stop that from happening as soon as it occurred. Training Ground 7 was the closest training ground to her, and she decided to use that as her area to train. As she walked into the clearing, she saw two figures standing in the middle. Even at the distance she was from them, she recognized them immediately. How could she not, considering how there was a tall scarecrow-looking man with silver hair and a young man with an orange jumpsuit standing there? Naruto stared at the sliced pieces of paper in each of his hands. So that means my chakra is wind nature, right? So it seems. Kakashi nodded, rubbing his chin. That's actually pretty shocking to see. Most shinobi in Konoha have fire nature chakra. Wind is more of a Suna thing. Naruto grumbled. Wind doesn't seem as cool as something like fire or lightning. Fire and lightning style jutsu may be a bit more flashy, but each of the elements hold an equal amount of pros and cons, depending on the situation. Lectured Kakashi. I guess. So what comes in? Poof. Hi. Shit. Exclaimed Naruto, almost literally jumping out of his pants. Naruto had fallen onto his ass, and clutched at his chest as he leered at the woman who spontaneously poofed into existence behind him. What the hell? Anko began lightly chuckling. Your guard was down. What if I was an enemy? I could have slit your throat before you would have even known what was happening. Kakashi shook his head while Naruto pointed a finger at her. Yeah, well, you're not an enemy. You're a crazy snake lady who just scared the hell out of me. I'm honestly starting to question which one is more dangerous. He then crossed his arms. Why is everyone insisting on scaring the crap out of me today? You make it too easy. Anko said. What you doin'? Naruto dusted himself off. I was training until you made my heart almost fly out of my chest. Don't be a drama queen. She scoffed. And you consider standing here doing nothing as training? We were actually figuring out Naruto's chakra change in nature. Kakashi intervened. He needs to do so in order to create a new jutsu for himself. Anko looked at the scarecrow with a raised eyebrow. He's just now figuring out his chakra change in nature? What have you been teaching him this whole time? Finally. Someone gets it. Naruto grumbled under his breath. Kakashi's sweat dropped. Anko, what are you doing here? You're interrupting Naruto's training. I'm here to train too, Kakashi. This training ground is big enough for us both. She scoffed before looking at Naruto. And hey, I thought you said you weren't in the mood to train. Well, this isn't very intense training. All the stuff that comes after will have to wait until I get my seals situated. Answered Naruto. So you both feel that you need an entire training grounds to yourself just to figure out your chakra change in nature? Anko questioned. You could have done that at home. Naruto looked at Kakashi, who simply shrugged in response. Anko shook her head and pushed the two men out of her way. If you'll excuse me, I actually have some real training to do. Feel free to watch if you have nothing better to do. A few minutes later, Anko finished up laying down her targets and posts, effectively hiding them in areas that were not immediately obvious or out in the open. She must have placed at least 24 of them, all in different directions, altitudes, and distances. She stood at least 50 meters away from each target around her in the middle of the clearing, holding 2 fistfuls of shuriken between her fingers. The elite Jounin closed her eyes and took a deep breath. As soon as she exhaled, her eyes opened and she cocked her arm ready to throw a shuriken at her first target that was directly in front of her, approximately 54 meters away. Then right after, she twisted her body to throw one at another target in the opposite direction, 62 meters away. Before Naruto had even realized what he was looking at, loud thunk noises was heard from each of the targets she was hitting, right on the bullseye. She threw the metal weapons in random directions at rapid succession. By the time one target had been hit, another shuriken was already flying to another target in a different direction. And if she were to run out of shuriken in one hand, the other would still be throwing kunai at another target as she grabbed more from her hip pouch. Her bodily maneuvers caused her to spin around gracefully as her arms were almost blurred due to the speed of her movements. Naruto was even beginning to wonder if she was even looking at the targets before throwing them. As he watched Anko's exercise, he also happened to notice not just her agility, but her flexibility and posture. Watching Anko perform the task was almost like watching an exotic dancer, as her fast but graceful movements was captivating to watch. She made it look easy, and due to the flailing of her large trench coat, Naruto was able to see some parts of her agile body move and jiggle ever so slightly, making him reminisce about how exactly he was feeling when first laid eyes on Anko at the bar the other day. After a few more seconds, Anko had landed flat on her heels and let out a quick phew, as no more targets were left. All 27 targets were successfully hit spot on, even if the target's bullseye was blocked by something like a bush or a tree branch. Naruto gawked in amazement, as he'd never seen such exemplary precision with shuriken. At least not in combination with the speed Anko just exhibited. She's good was all Naruto could say. Kakashi chuckled and nodded. Yeah, Anko was always known for her aim, said the jounin. I'd even go as far as to say that she has better aim with weapons than I do. Really? Naruto asked incredulously. I mean, that was cool and everything, but I've seen you do cooler stuff than that with shuriken. Kakashi could only chuckle again. Oh, this is just a warm-up for her. A warm-up? Naruto's jaw was open. He turned his head just in time to see Anko approaching him, ignoring the look on his face. She wasn't even breaking a sweat. Hey, you're able to create lots of shadow clones, right? Anko asked him. Yeah? Why? I want moving targets, she said, so come on, whip a few out for me. Sure. Naruto created his signature hand seal. How many do you want me to make? About 50 should be fine. 50? Exclaimed Naruto. Anko rose an eyebrow. What? Is 50 too much for ya? Naruto shook his head. No, it's just that 50 is a lot of clones to use for target practice, especially if you want them to move. Oh? Anko said before grinning sheepishly. So I take it that you don't know about my little hidden talent, I see. I guess my reputation doesn't precede me just yet. Kakashi gestured toward Anko before taking out his little orange book. Anko here has a proficiency with her use of kunai, shuriken, saban, pretty much anything throwable. Her accuracy is good enough to rival Itachi's, and despite how he's younger than both of us, he was undoubtedly a prodigy in his time. Woe was all Naruto could say. Anko smirked, but then tapped her foot impatiently. Alright, so are you gonna create some clones or not? Naruto nodded. Yeah? Tajikage Bunshin no Jutsu, he exclaimed before 50 identical copies of him came into existence. Good, said Anko. Now command them to go into the forest and either try to hide or outrun me. I'll only be using throwables to dispel them. Naruto nodded and commanded them to do what she said. All 50 clones raced into the forest out of the clearing, all in different directions. You might be in there for a while, Naruto commented. That's a lot of clones and a lot of ground to cover. I bet 500 Ryo that I'll get them all in under 20 minutes. Anko challenged, offering her hand to seal the deal. Naruto hesitated due to her confidence, but shook her hand nonetheless. Alright, you're on. Anko grinned and got in position. Well then, feel free to start the clock. Kakashi looked at his watch. 3, 2, 1, go. And with that Anko disappeared into the forest, hunting after Naruto's clones. Kakashi shook his head. It's unfortunate that you're about to be out 500 Ryo. What makes you so sure that I'm going to lose the bet? Naruto questioned. Kakashi simply continued reading his book as he answered Naruto's question. Anko is a Tokubetsu jounin for a reason. Yes, she's in the torture and interrogation department of our forces, but Anko is also specially suited for tracking and assassination missions. Not only is her aim deadly, but she can track almost as well as an Inuzuka can. She has no special Kekkei Genkai, nor does she belong to any clan, but she's definitely someone that can track down and dispel all of your clones not only in record time, but without missing her targets even once. Naruto only looked in amazement. He never would have thought Anko had these talents, but had to remind himself that she was not only a jounin class kunoichi, but a Tokubetsu jounin. Are you saying that she could be stronger than even you, Kakashi-sensei? He inquired. Kakashi chuckled. Well, not to sound full of myself, but I wouldn't say that I'd go that far. She may best me in some areas, and she is undoubtedly a lethal kunoichi, but I'd say she could use some work in a few other areas in order to surpass me. Naruto said nothing. He was still shocked and impressed with what he's heard and seen from her, and began to wonder how he'd fare if he were to go up against her like she wanted. The thought of it alone made him eager to want to start fighting again, but he had to remind himself that there are things he had to take care of beforehand. 17 minutes later, Anko emerged out of the forest with a grin on her face. I want my money. Naruto's sweat dropped and decided to just honor the rules of the bet, considering how he lost fair and square. He counted each individual time he heard his clones being dispelled in the forest, and undoubtedly counted all 50 of them. Told ya, was Kakashi's small comment, which made Naruto grunt as he reached into his wallet. Anko approached the boy and swiped the bills from him, stuffing them into the pocket of her trench coat. Let this be a lesson to you. I don't make bets unless I'm at least 99.9% sure that I'll win, she said with a very proud smirk, but I will say, your clones were pretty slippery. Some of them actually made me break a sweat hunting them down. This made Naruto grin as well. I'm faster than I look. Anko nodded. I see that. I can't wait to fight you. The loudmouth pair sent each other challenging looks before Kakashi cleared his throat. Well, I'd best be heading off. Naruto, let me know when you get your seals situated so we can continue with your training. But until then, I'll be seeing you both around. And with that, Kakashi disappeared from the training grounds, destination unknown as always. Hey, Anko called, looking at Naruto, how you holding up? Naruto appreciated her concern. I'm doing better. Glad to hear it. Anko said genuinely, I'm actually glad that you're at least doing some kind of training, and still have some fighting spirit. Naruto laughed. No way. After seeing you training, it just made me want to fight you even more. Anko snickered. If anything, I thought it'd make you want to fight me less. How do you have such good aim anyway? Naruto asked. Kakashi-sensei told me that you don't have any Kekkei Genkai or anything. So how did you manage to have aim that Kakashi-sensei even said was better than his? You can be the best at anything as long as you practice enough. Stated Anko. Hey, what has Kakashi been teaching you for the past 3 years of your life? Why is he just now teaching you about something as basic as chakra change in nature? Naruto scratched his head. Not much. He taught me how to walk up trees and some other basic training in the beginning, but most of the things I know now was taught to me by other people. Anko didn't seem very impressed or happy to hear that. And just why is that? Well, I did go on a training trip with Jiraiya for a few years, but other than that, he was just busy training Sasuke. Naruto answered. The Uchiha Anko mumbled before shaking her head, knowing why it was Kakashi dedicated his time to the one who bore the Sharingan, of course. Naruto raised an eyebrow. What? Is there something I should know? Anko shook her head. Nah. I'm just glad he's taking time to train you now. An idea suddenly popped into her head, making her grin, and thus making Naruto uneasy. Hey, you want me to give you some lessons on how to better your aim? Sure. Naruto lit up only for a second. Wait, there's a catch, right? I wouldn't call it a catch necessarily, Anko replied a bit too innocently. I'll teach you a thing or two if you treat me out to dinner tonight. Oh, is that all? Asked Naruto. I thought I already agreed to that when you made me breakfast yesterday. Nah, that was its own thing. Anko replied with a big smile. Naruto deadpanned. So what you're telling me is that I'm gonna have to treat you to food twice now. I think it's fair. I gave you food, you give me food. I give you pointers on how to sharpen your aim, you give me food. Anko stated, still smiling. Hey, I'll even let you consider it a date if you want the street cred of managing to score, not just 1, but 2 dates with a Tokubetsu Jounin. This derailed Naruto's train of thought for just a second. A date? Naruto asked. You'd go on a date with me? Anko shrugged. I mean, hey, we've already slept together in our underwear. Naruto blushed, despite how she wasn't incorrect. The Jounin saw Naruto getting flustered and shook her head with a small chuckle. Look, it doesn't have to be a date if it's going to weird you out. I was just making a joke out of it more than anything. Naruto laughed nervously, and it made him wonder why he was being so awkward about it. After all, Naruto wasn't new to the idea of going on a date, even if he'd never been on a legitimate one. Perhaps it was the fact that the proposal was coming from someone who outranked him, and has proven she could assassinate him on more than one occasion. It may be that, or that, as their most recent interactions would prove, he was pretty attracted to her. Anko's sex appeal lied not only in her appearance, but her personality. While she did exhibit behaviors that would intimidate a majority of men, Naruto found himself a bit drawn to it. Not necessarily the fact that she was ready to hurt him at any notice, but that despite how cold she could be when faced with something she didn't like, she wasn't a cold person. The blonde Jinchuriki had been so wrapped up in his own thoughts. It took Anko snapping her fingers in front of him for him to realize he should probably be giving her an answer. Naruto gave an overcompensated grin to cover up his slight but obvious embarrassment. Well, whether it's a date or not, I'd love to have you teach me a few things. Good. I'm craving barbecue tonight. She stated with a grin before grabbing a few shuriken from her pouch. Alright, so the first thing you'll want to know is that these things never get thrown in a perfectly straight line. Chapter 5. Akatsuki on the move. As dusk began to loom over her village, Tsunade was taking a break from her paperwork, sitting in her office alone watching the sunset. Despite her conflicting feelings about being Hokage, she loved the perk of having a large window behind her office space that looked over the village. The view was always spectacular, no matter what time of year or day it was. It provided as a way to help clear a Hokage's thoughts and anxieties, combating against the stresses that come with leading thousands of people day in and day out. Knock knock knock. Tsunade closed her eyes. Her meditation was always short-lived, interrupted every time by that cursed door. Enter. She called, turning around in her seat. A tall man with facial scars and a large black trench coat walked into the room. Tsunade nodded, as she had been expecting to hear back from this man around this time. Ibiki. Did she find out anything? She found out plenty, actually. Ibiki nodded. Anko's interrogation skills are almost starting to surpass mine. Women are scarier than men. Tsunade replied with a knowing chuckle. What information do you have for me? Ibiki Marino cleared his throat. The prisoner was actually a prospect from Kyumogakure that the Akatsuki had been using for a while to find details on the Two-Tails Jinchuriki. He was an insider from Kyumo that wanted the Two-Tails gone, and was offered quite the hefty penny to find out how to lure out the Jinchuriki without attracting too much attention. The fifth Hokage didn't reply immediately. She spaced off, wondering if there were any insiders in her own village that would be willing to cut deals with the Akatsuki to have Naruto gone. I see. Tsunade mumbled. Ibiki continued, not only that, but he aided in the formation of a plan for the Akatsuki to ambush the Two-Tails on her next mission. He handed the Hokage a scroll, and there is a map marked with the general area of where the ambush is planned to be executed. Tsunade opened the scroll and looked at the map of the 5 great shinobi nations. The area that was marked was within the southwestern portion of Kumogakure, right near the border of the Land of Frost. This area is marked with blood. Tsunade noted, making her uneasy. Despite her overcoming her fear of blood during her altercation with Orochimaru and Kabuto a few years prior, the sight of blood still made her uncomfortable. Anko had the prisoner mark where it was on that map. And let's just say that she didn't appreciate how he didn't exactly make things too easy for either of them. Tsunade shook her head. She knew that the people in the torture and interrogation division had to use force when necessary, but she could only imagine how persuasive Anko could be if the prisoners weren't immediately cooperative. When will this ambush happen? Tomorrow. Ibiki answered. The Akatsuki plans to simply wait until the Two-Tails reaches her mission's rendezvous point to get the jump on her. I see. Is that everything? She asked, closing the scroll. Just about. On an unrelated note, I'm sure that the prisoner developed a case of ophidiophobia and gynophobia thanks to Anko. Tsunade raised an eyebrow, eliciting for the chief of interrogation to elaborate. A fear of snakes and women. Ah. Tsunade hummed. She couldn't blame the prisoner, after all. Anko could terrify demons if they were locked in a room with her. Well, excellent work, Ibiki. And tell Anko next time you see her that I said good job. Hi. Ibiki nodded before he was dismissed. Tsunade thought to herself for a second before turning back around in her chair. She eyed the setting sun as she began to formulate a plan in her head. I will do what I can to prevent more Jinchuriki from falling into the hands of the Akatsuki. After what happened with Gaara, it's time to really crack down on these guys. She then called Shizen into the room, figuring it would take too much time to inform the Reikage of the intel they'd obtained. Not only that, but Konoha and Kumo weren't exactly on the best of terms. She ultimately decided to use her best stalling team to prevent the Akatsuki from seizing the opportunity of capturing the two-tailed demon cat, knowing that a specific squad known as Team 10 was more than capable. Anko Mitarashi had placed another strip of raw beef onto the grill in front of her, and Naruto watched as the meat sizzled on contact. I'd heard reports about it, but I want to know from the source. Anko replied, so you mean to tell me that you managed to learn that technique in not only one day, but used it to defeat Mizuki? All before you even became a shinobi? Yeah. Naruto said with a smile. Iruka-sensei was in trouble, and I had to be sure Mizuki got the ass-kicking he deserved. Anko nodded, impressive. I've also heard reports of Chunin and Jounin chasing you around the village due to your pranks, only to struggle to catch you every time. I even thought that some of your pranks were golden. Naruto rubbed the back of his head coyly. Ha, thanks. It's like I said, I'm faster than I look. Anko grinned, flipping over her barbecue to cook the other side. I guess you are. We can only hope that you know what to do with this agility you possess when you go up against me. You betcha, declared Naruto, who grabbed his barbecue from off the grill and placed it on his plate. As he took his first bite, a thought occurred to him, a thought that had been troubling him since he had left Anko's home. Hey, Anko? What's up? A bit of hesitation stopped Naruto from replying immediately. He leaned forward to whisper to her so nobody around them would hear. I know you said that you don't want to talk about it more until we got our fight, but if the Yandane really is my dad, would I be wrong for being mad at him? Anko's immediate impulse was to reiterate Naruto's point of not further discussing the topic until they met the terms of their agreement like he said, but she saw the look on his face. It made her regret mentioning it to him in the first place, especially since she decided to give him an answer regardless. Well, Anko sighed, reclining back into her seat, that's a bit of a complicated question, Blondie. You can never be wrong or right when it comes to how you feel about a situation, because they're your feelings. Feelings aren't really something that can be categorized as wrong or right. Naruto appreciated the words of wisdom, but didn't enjoy how it wasn't something that really answered his question. I see, it's just that the more I think about it, the more anger I feel towards the fourth. Even before you told me about the possibility of him being my dad, I was pretty upset to find out that I was placed with this burden when I was just a baby. Anko nodded, empathizing with him. I hear ya. All I can really say is that it's likely all for a reason, Naruto. I doubt the fourth did it to make your life difficult. Maybe he was just pressed for time. Maybe he simply had faith that you'd end up alright in the end. Maybe. My childhood was far from alright, Naruto interjected, crossing his arms. Be that as it may, you're still here breathing. And while things may have sucked, and probably still does suck for you, you have to keep in mind that your hardships build character. My childhood sucked too, and look at me now. My accomplishments easily made up for my scars and bruises I endured in the past. It's all a process, and the most beneficial processes for your character are usually the most difficult. Naruto didn't reply right away. He found her point solid, and deemed it enough of an answer to his question. I see. Anko watched the boy as he swam through his thoughts. She sympathized with him more than she was willing to tell him, and knew what he was going through, to an extent. She had to admit that she envied him a bit. wishing that she had someone who told her the things she was telling him when she was his age. It may not all make sense right now, but as long as you keep your eye on the prize, you'll soon understand where I'm coming from. Anko finalized. She then looked down at the grill between them. Now are you going to eat, or are you going to wait until your food burns to a crisp? Crap! Naruto yelped, realizing that his meat strips was beginning to burn. Anko shook her head. He was surely not the brightest of people, but he was definitely interesting to be around. I have another question. Is it about your parents? Maybe. Anko crossed her arms. No more questions. I thought we reached an agreement about leaving that topic alone. I know. But this one is just about my mom, since I know you said that you knew her too. He pleaded. Can you describe her? Was she pretty? Was she nice? Did she? A whiz of air was heard, followed by the dull sound of metal hitting the back of the wooden booth Naruto sat in. Naruto looked to his right to see a kunai embedded in the wood, no more than an inch away from his face. Shut up and listen, Naruto. Anko commanded, lacking any sense of a playful aura. I told you that information is supposed to be confidential. I can be killed if someone overhears this conversation. We've already said enough in here as it is, and I'm making it a new rule to make it a strictly forbidden topic to bring up in public. Anko's piercing eyes bore into him, much like the kunai next to his head that bore into his seat. I mean it. I will hurt you the next time you bring it up. Naruto only stared at her for a few seconds before looking back down at his food, saying nothing. Anko could tell the boy was hurt, but she deemed it as a necessary evil. She couldn't blame Naruto for wanting to know more about his parents, but asking about them, especially in public settings, puts her life in jeopardy. Besides, she felt she gave him enough information already as it is. He should be grateful at the end of the day, in her mind. She watched as he played with his food, a very notable frown plastered on his face. She sighed. She could only imagine how unfair it was for Naruto to just want to know about his deceased parents, and not be able to find out through other people because of a law that forbid the mention of them. The rule was technically about the Kyuubi, but Anko was no fool. If Naruto were to mention his parents to the wrong person, evidence would trail back to her, and that would get her roped up into trouble easily. Just wait until I kick your butt first. Then I'll let you know everything you want to know, she said with a slight grin. Her plan in cheering Naruto back up managed to work a bit, as Naruto looked at her with a grin of her own. Once I get my seal checked out, I'll make sure you eat those words, was Naruto's response. He frowned afterwards, however. Speaking of which, I've been thinking about coming clean to Bachan. About Sakura. And I want to, but what if it turns into something ugly? Anko shrugged. Then you deal with it. Regardless of how it turns out, telling her is the best thing you can do right now. If there's repercussions for it, I assure you they'd still find their way to you if you tried to keep it under wraps. Naruto nodded before resuming his feast. The next morning, as Tsunade took a sip from her coffee mug as an aid to help energize her for the day ahead, a knock was heard from her door. Come in, she called. Shikamaru entered the room a second later. Shikamaru. How did the mission go? Shikamaru's expression seemed a lot more lifeless than usual, Tsunade noticed. The young jounin turned his head away and took a deep breath. The mission was a success, he stated. We successfully prevented the Akatsuki from capturing the Two-Tails Jinchuriki. However, the Two-Tails host was already banged up pretty bad by the time we got to her, so she's currently detained at the hospital, receiving medical care. Oh, wonderful, Tsunade stated with a bit of surprise in her tone. With the way he walked in, she thought that he was going to inform her that the mission was unsuccessful. Where's Asuma? Shikamaru didn't reply right away. In the hospital, he said with a shake of his head, but he won't make it. Eno concluded that his wounds were beyond repair due to the Akatsuki. He passed before we left the battle zone. The fifth Hokage sighed and rubbed her forehead. Damn it, Asuma was one of our finest. I'm sorry, Shikamaru. Shikamaru said nothing. The whole time since he entered the office, Shikamaru stared blankly into space as he talked, with his inflection as flat as a plateau. The village leader noted his condition and sighed again. In any case, good job on your mission, Shikamaru. Asuma shaped you into a very talented jounin. Once a tear dripped down his chin, Tsunade decided to let him have some time to grieve. She knew how much his sensei meant to him. I'll give Squad 10 a week off to recover. If you and your squad need more time, feel free to let me know. But in any case, I'll handle the rest. A thought then occurred to her. How's Eno holding up? She's taking it pretty hard, said Shikamaru. In combination with what happened to Sakura a few days ago, I think she may need more time than Choji and I. Tsunade frowned and nodded slowly. That's why I asked. She rubbed her head again, cursing the responsibilities that came with her role as Hokage. You can go, Shikamaru. Thank you. Once she was alone, the Slug Queen had to fight her urge in taking a swig from her sake bottle hidden in her desk. She figured it was way too early to do so, but promised herself that she'd take a sip or 5 after she left the office that night. Drip drip drip. Naruto opened his eyes to see that he was standing directly in front of the Kyuubi's giant cell, ankle deep in water, as always. He sighed. He always hated being here. What do you want now, Kyuubi? Naruto said into the blackness that lied beyond the bars of the dark room. Naruto stood there with his arms crossed, ready to see a pair of red evil eyes leering at him again. However, those eyes never emerged. The blonde stood there in silence for a whole minute before calling out again. No response. Usually, at the very least, he'd hear her sinister chuckling, but he heard and saw nothing. Was she asleep? Did she escape? The paper seal was still on the bar of the cage, but as Naruto looked closer, he did notice that the paper was hanging slightly. Just as Naruto began to ponder all the different possibilities as to what that could mean, Naruto started hearing splashing footsteps behind him, and from what he could tell from the increasing volume of them, the owner of the footsteps was running towards him. Quickly connecting the cause of this with the reason why Kyubi could possibly not be in her cell, he tensed up and turned around, looking into the surrounding obscurity. He clenched his fist and adrenaline started to surge through him. He wasn't sure how fighting works in this realm, but Naruto made sure that he was going to defend himself at all costs. And Naruto? Naruto unclenched his hands. He'd know that voice anywhere. Confirming his thoughts, the splashing footsteps slowed to a stop once they stepped into the visible lighting. It was Sakura. Naruto was past the point of disbelief. It was her. Staring right at him. Naruto, it is you. She murmured, locking her emerald irises onto his cerulean ones. She slowly walked over to him, and Naruto's certainty that it was the real Sakura increased as the gap between them shortened. Her facial expression, her stride, they all gave him clarity that this was the woman he'd inadvertently murdered on his most recent mission. Sakura Haruno stopped once she was directly in front of him. Her facial expression displayed signs of shock, as did his. Sakura-chan, is that really you? Naruto asked. The proof was right in front of him, obviously, but he had to ask for confirmation. Yeah, it's me. She answered, giving him a short smile, though she still seemed surprised. Where are we? What is this place? Naruto's mind was scrambling so much that he almost didn't register her questions. This is where my demon dwells. I don't really understand the reality of this place, but this is where I can communicate with the Kyubi. He decided to counter with some questions of his own. How are you here right now? I've never really seen anyone else in here like this. I don't know, honestly. This is the first time I've been able to see anything since. Naruto knew what the other half of her sentence was. He felt liquid building up in his tear ducts and felt a ton of heaviness and emotion weighing down on him. I'm so sorry, Naruto apologized, too late to catch a tear from falling down his face before he could wipe it. I don't know exactly what happened on that mission, but hey. Sakura reached out to gently rub his shoulder. It's okay, Naruto. It's not okay. He interrupted. I don't know how I'm even able to talk to you right now, but you know what happened. And it's all my fault, it's all my fault. Sakura gazed at the sobbing boy for a few seconds before threading her arms between his arms and torso to hug him. She clasped onto him tightly and rested the side of her face onto his chest. Naruto was so caught up in his own sorrow, he couldn't even muster up words. He simply wrapped his arms around the woman in his mindscape, hugging her tightly as if she'd come back if he held on long enough. Naruto, listen. I don't blame you for what happened, so neither should you. It's not your fault. She told him, still listening to his heartbeat. You can't blame yourself. I know your demon had more to do with it than you did. So please, Naruto, don't blame yourself. As warming as it was to hear this from Sakura herself, Naruto shook his head. I'm trying. But it's so hard to feel like that every second I don't see you. To know that if it wasn't for me, you'd still be around. Sakura pulled away to look him in the eyes. I am still around, Naruto. I know what happened on that mission. I know I'm supposed to be dead, and maybe I am, but I don't think I've moved on. I feel stuck. Or trapped. I don't really know how to explain it, but something in my gut tells me that something isn't right. Naruto took a second to process what that could possibly mean. After all, Sakura was right here in front of him, and he could tell it wasn't a dream. He'd been able to distinguish the difference between his dreams and being in this mindscape since he was little. So how exactly was she here? This doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Naruto said, rubbing his forehead. Part of me wants to think this is a dream, but I know it's not. You're here, right in front of me when I thought I'd never see you again. Sakura smiled and was about to reply until the room they were in went pitch black. Visibility was nil for only a few seconds. When the torches that were suspended on the walls of the room reignited, Sakura was no longer there. Naruto quickly looked around the room to see where she could have went, and was shocked when he turned around enough to see 9 foxtails flailing behind a female demon in the cell that was once empty. She was glaring at him hostilely. You need to leave. Naruto was a bit confused to hear that from her. Usually, she'd want him around to ridicule, tease, or threaten him to no end. What's going on, Kyubi? Where's Sakura? He demanded, marching up to the large steel cell. She's dead. Why did I just see her here? Because you're delusional. She scoffed. You're ridden with guilt to the point where you're seeing things that aren't there. You did kill her, after all. Naruto wasn't buying it. Something was amiss. He walked up to the bars of the cell until he was only 2 feet away from the Kyubi on the other side. What is going on, Kyubi? There's something you're not telling me. The demon crossed her arms, rolling her lava-red eyes. You really are delusional. What makes you think I have anything to do with these hallucinations you're having? I'm not crazy. I know what I saw and heard. I could even feel her touching me. He wouldn't back down. That's something you should be concerned about then. You saw your teammate die before your eyes. Her funeral is even taking place tomorrow if I recall correctly. The faster you accept that your precious friend is dead, the easier things will be for you. Naruto took another step forward. There was an invisible barrier in between the spaces of the bars that prevented the two from contacting one another. But if Naruto was any closer, he'd be standing directly in front of her. You're up to something, he accused her, and whatever it is, Naruto's sentence was cut off when a harsh grunt escaped his lips. His eyes bulged as he felt indescribable pain coming from his gut. He looked down to see the Kyuubi's claws embedded into his flesh, through his clothing. Red fluid began rapidly spreading around the 5 fingers stabbing into him, and Naruto was silenced by the combination of the large amounts of shock and pain he was experiencing. I said you need to leave? The demon said with a snarl. Go? Now. With a very sharp and desperate inhale, Naruto jumped out of his sleep in a cold sweat. He panted heavily and clutched at the spot on his abdomen that he thought was penetrated by the demon's claws. It had taken him a bit of time to adjust to reality, and get his breathing under control. He scanned his room and surroundings before looking out his window to see the sun peeking over the horizon. What the hell? Naruto wondered to himself out loud. His heart was still pounding, and his mind raced with the different conclusions that he thought of in relation to what happened in his subconscious. Was it really a dream? If not, was he really hallucinating in his own mind? Why did the Kyuubi want him gone? How was she able to send him back into reality like that? So many questions raided his mind enough to make it impossible to head back to sleep. Naruto closed his eyes and dropped his head back into his pillow. He wondered if the grief was making him go insane. He didn't enjoy how unsure he was about what was a reality, and what wasn't. After laying in bed to assess his excessive amount of thoughts, he came to a decision that would allow him to at the very least get some weight off of his shoulders. He decided that today, he was going to tell Tsunade the truth. Anko Mitarashi panted as she came down from her high. Sweat lacquered her peach skin, and it took some time for her to regulate her air intake. With a deep satisfied sigh, she removed her moistened hand from underneath her cloth undergarments that was now soaked in the crotch. God, I swear those early morning sessions are the best ones, she thought to herself as her dry hand wiped the sweat off of her forehead. It's definitely a nice way to start the day. After lying there for a moment to bask in the ambience of post-climactic euphoria, Anko muscled up the energy to get out of bed and hop in her shower. The steamy atmosphere made it difficult to resist the temptation to go for a round 2, but she managed to succeed in washing up and exiting the bathroom before the water ran cold. The violet-headed Jounin wrapped her torso in a white towel and her hair in another after stepping out of the shower. Just as she exited the bathroom with a razor and shaving cream in hand, she heard a knock on her door. Great. She sighed with annoyance. Who could possibly be knocking on my door this early in the morning? Anko placed the objects on her bed and walked over to her door to answer. She looked through her peephole to find Kurenai on the other side. This was strange for a few reasons. Kurenai knew that she was not exactly a morning person, and avoided the possibility of being hit with Anko's grumpy attitude whenever she could. Not only that, but Anko was usually the one who had to initiate contact with her friend, not only because of the Asuma situation, but because Kurenai was always more self-reserved, even towards her loved ones. Kurenai, what's up? Anko asked after cracking her door to peer at her. Upon further inspection, Anko could see that Kurenai looked extremely down, and wasn't wearing makeup like she normally would. She'd usually never leave home without at least a little bit of mascara or lipstick applied. Kurenai glimpsed at Anko for a moment before her watery eyes returned back to looking at the ground. I just wanted to see if you were available to talk, but if it's a bad time, it can wait. Concern began to override any other bit feelings Anko felt, due to the fact that she could tell something was seriously wrong. She may have teased Kurenai about being emotional, but she knew that Kurenai was actually pretty tough, and it had to have taken a lot for something to affect her emotional state bad enough for her to come knocking on her door like this. Anko opened the door more, gesturing for her to enter her home. Not at all, Kurenai. Come in. Kurenai thanked Anko and stepped inside. After closing the door, Anko sat on the bed and motioned for her to sit next to her. What did you want to talk about, Nai-chan? Asked Anko, giving her 100% of her attention. Kurenai hesitantly opened her mouth to reply, until her lips began to quiver into the most somber expression Anko had ever seen from her best friend. The Genjutsu queen buried her face into her palms and began sobbing profusely. Anko's concern easily doubled by this point. Nai-chan? She called, wrapping an arm around her shoulders comfortingly. What's wrong? Anko patiently waited for a response. Through her tears and irregular breathing pattern, Kurenai managed to build up the ability to give one to her. He's dead. Asuma is dead. Anko's eyes widened before she shut them dejectedly. Anko enveloped Kurenai into her arms tightly, allowing her to cry to her heart's content into her chest. I'm so sorry, Kurenai. She whispered to her, rubbing her back comfortingly. Kurenai's weeping only increased in volume and severity. That's it, get it all out. I'm here for you, hun. It's going to be alright. I promise. Naruto Uzumaki entered the Hokage tower, and sighed once he reached the Hokage's door. He wasn't sure what was to come from him spilling the truth after covering it up with a lie. He knew Tsunade would likely not be pleased to hear that he misconstrued intel on a mission, and went as far as to convince another shinobi to lie on his behalf. The main thing he was worried about was whether or not he'd be thrown in jail, exiled, or even executed for his crime. Even if Tsunade herself wanted to let him off the hook due to their close relationship, He wasn't sure if it was enough to stop her from doing her job anyway. It was then that Anko's words from yesterday replayed in his mind. If there was any sort of punishment that awaited him, he'd have to simply face it head-on, rather than cowering out of it for as long as he could and letting matters fester. The only thing he could do was plead his case and hope for the best. After another deep breath to shake off his nerves, Naruto raised his fist to knock on the door. Before he did, however, Naruto heard voices on the other side that did not sound as though the Hokage was having a normal conversation with someone. The discussion sounded heated and emotionally passionate. Naruto pressed his ear against the door to listen in on the conversation better, and was a bit taken aback by the things being said. Eno, I'm going to need you to watch your tone when you're speaking to the Hokage. Or else what? You'll strip me of my rank? You'd honestly be doing me a favor compared to what you're trying to do now. Eno, please. Naruto could tell that this was Shizen's voice. You're being unreasonable. Don't talk back to her like that. You know what's unreasonable? Me trying to do the best thing I can do for myself and being unable to because the Hokage claims that I'm being irrational. I've made my mind up. I'm done. I've thought long and hard about it, so why the hell can't I just turn in this stupid headband and be done with it? Naruto heard Tsunade take a deep breath. She was trying her best to keep her emotions at bay, because you're thinking with your emotions. I understand your pain and frustrations. Sakura and Asuma died for the sake of the village, just like many other shinobi, and he heard Eno scoff. He'd never heard Eno talk with such an ill-tempered tone before. Fuck this. Naruto heard the clattering sound of metal dropping against wood. It's really hard to take anything you say seriously when you're the reason they're dead. Excuse me? Naruto heard footsteps approaching the door, and backed his head away just in time as the door opened. Naruto froze in place as Eno strode out of the door with a fiery aura. Eno, move. Eno growled, bumping Naruto by the shoulder as she passed him. Naruto watched as the Yamanaka stormed away from any human contact, destination unknown. With his earlier task forgotten about, Naruto looked into the room of Tsunade's office to see Tsunade herself standing before her desk with grit teeth and a vein popping out on the side of her head. She was clearly trying hard not to hunt the backtalking Kunoichi down to drag her face into the ground for her insolent behavior. Shizen stood next to her, trying to calm Tsunade down to the best of her ability. She's just upset over her friends and sensei's deaths, Tsunade-sama, Shizen muttered to her, with a tone that showed how carefully she was treading. Don't confront her now. She's just dealing with the grief in her own way. The Slug Queen let out an angry sigh that was almost a growl and sat back into her seat. She's lucky she walked away when she did. The nerve of that girl to talk to me like that. Who the hell does she think she is? Naruto slowly walked into the room. Easy to say that he wasn't expecting these events to unfold. What happened? He inquired to the two women. Shizen saw that Tsunade was too busy regulating her frustrations to answer. Eno is having a rough time coping with Sakura's and Asuma's passing. Tsunade-sama called her in to have a one-on-one talk with her, and it didn't go as expected. She pointed at the Konoha headband on Tsunade's desk. Eno wanted to turn her headband and retire as a kunoichi, and Tsunade tried to tell her that it was a rash decision, but Eno wasn't trying to hear it. Naruto stood there for a second to let this news digest. He wasn't even aware that Asuma had passed, and from what he'd overheard from the conversation, Eno wasn't in her right frame of mind to make the decisions she was making for herself. The blonde approached the desk and grabbed Eno's headband. I'll talk to her. I wouldn't recommend that, Naruto-kun. Warned Shizen. Eno, she needs some time to air out. Asuma and Sakura meant a lot to her, so she's in a very sensitive state right now. No, let him talk to her. Grunted Tsunade. Shizen was shocked to hear this. Tsunade-sama, respectfully, I don't think that is wise. Neither is causing a scene like the one Eno caused just now. The Sannin responded. Her frustrated eyes turned to Naruto. Talk to her. She needs someone to talk some sense into her. If anyone can do it, it'd be you. I'd sooner rip her head off for her behavior than anything else. Naruto looked at her and gave a solid nod before walking off before Shizen could say anything. The Hokage's assistant sighed. Tsunade-sama, I really don't think Eno is going to listen properly to reason in the state that she's in. Maybe if she had some time to cool off first. The Godium let out a distressing sigh and shook her head. That's exactly why I told Naruto to go after her. Naruto isn't reasonable. His stubbornness makes him that way. And if Eno is willing to talk to the most authoritative member of this village the way she just had, then I can't imagine the things she'd do or say after leaving out of here. Eno is burning hot with emotions right now, and sometimes flames need to be suffocated before they spread. I trust that Naruto is capable of performing this task better than anyone. I suppose, Shizuka said reluctantly. She still had her doubts, but at the end of the day, she knew it was out of her hands. The only thing she could do at this current moment is trust in Tsunade's decision and hope for the best. Chapter 7, Friends of Friends. Eno Yamanaka strode out of the front entrance of the Hokage Tower, and sighed upon seeing that she didn't make it 20 feet out of the door without someone chasing after her. Eno, wait up! Naruto called. Eno rolled her eyes and didn't break her stride. He would be the one to do it. Hey, I know you hear me. Leave me alone, Naruto, said Eno, picking up her pace. Can't you see I'm not exactly in the mood to talk? Eno was forced to stop moving when Naruto landed directly in front of her path from out of the air above her. She sent him a glare and crossed her arms. Move, I will once we talk. Eno shook her head and attempted to walk around him, only for Naruto to block her by mirroring her steps. Eno's leer intensified. Naruto, move. Eno stated, about one hair away from opening the lid to her compressed rage. I don't want to have to say it again. Or else what? You'll hurt me? Naruto challenged, crossing his own arms. Eno grit her teeth. Now she was getting mad. Why was this fool being so damn insistent on getting in her way? Why would he care so much? It was not only starting to annoy her, it was pissing her off. Yes, she warned, whether or not it'll happen depends on you. I'm telling you and warning you as your superior in rank that I'm allowed to use force if I feel that I'm being harassed. Naruto shook his head. What a low blow to call him out on his rank, that's funny. Last time I checked, you aren't really a chunin unless you have this. Eno leered at the headband in his hand. Moving her eyes back on the stubborn boy in front of her, Eno slapped the headband out of his hand, not even giving it so much of a glance as it dropped onto the sandy terrain a few meters away. You're being a real pest, you know that? Eno grunted. This is truly the last time I'm gonna say it, Naruto. Move. After this, I'm done talking. Naruto said nothing and stood his ground. His blue eyes were staring directly into hers and they stood there in a complete standstill for what seemed like eons. Okay. Have it your way. Eno stated before launching her fist at Naruto's jaw. Naruto caught the punch, and Eno growled as she fought against his strength. She sent another punch his way, and that one was caught as well. With Naruto having both of Eno's fists locked into place, he continued staring deep into her eyes, which was now filled with anger. Are you really this willing to assault me just because I want to talk to you? Asked Naruto. Are you really this willing to be so adamant about talking to me to make me have to? She shot back. She then lifted both her feet off the ground and pressed them against Naruto's chest. She used her lower body strength to launch herself backward and free herself from his hold. Naruto staggered back a bit, but stood back up straight to glare at the woman who flipped and landed about 15 feet in front of him. I'm leaving, Naruto. Do yourself a favor and stop wasting your time trying to talk to someone who isn't even a friend of yours. Despite how deep her words tried to cut him, he took a deep breath and made a snap decision. Sakura may still be around. Eno was about 2 seconds away from using a Shunshin. Naruto's words halted her in place, as she looked at Naruto meticulously. What? Naruto looked her in her eyes. Sakura may still be around. I was on that mission with her, and I know what really happened. He paused for a second, feeling guilty for roping her in like this. He deemed it necessary and walked over to her so that they were within murmuring distance. Not even the Hokage knows the truth behind what happened. Eno looked at her fellow blonde analytically while she tried to mentally figure out what to do with this information. What do you mean by that? Eno inquired. Are you saying that Sakura didn't get killed by Orochimaru? Naruto nodded. Then what happened to her? She demanded. Naruto motioned for her to keep her voice down. You better not be bullshitting me, Naruto. If you're trying to plan some sick joke, I'm serious. Naruto stated, crossing her arms and looking into her eyes. I'll tell you everything. My only condition is that you let me talk to you about some things first. Eno felt conflicted. On one hand, this could just be some false tactic to try and get his foot in the door to convince her not to quit as a kunoichi. If the Hokage couldn't do that, then why would he think he had that capability? Why did he even care? Eno had worked with him on a few occasions throughout their shinobi career, but there was no real inkling for him to believe they were friends, in her mind. Definitely not even close enough for him to care as to whether she wants to be a kunoichi or not. However, on the other hand, why would Naruto lie? It is true that it could all be a facade for him to talk to her, but she couldn't detect any suspicious body language from him. He sounded and looked as though he was telling the truth. Considering her training with her father in the torture and interrogation organization of the village, she picked up on a few fail-proof ways to tell if someone is telling a lie while talking that are deeper than simply noting their eye contact. Naruto looked her in the eyes the whole time he talked and did not display even one of these lesser-known tells. If he is telling the truth, just what did he know that not even the Hokage knows about? Alright, I'll bite. Eno said, crossing her arms. However, if you want a chance to talk to me about whatever it is you want to talk about, I have a condition myself. If it turns out that you're feeding me lies, I want permission to take my frustrations out on you. Deal. Naruto agreed. Eno didn't expect this. Alright. She hesitated. Let's go to the flower shop, then. We can talk there. Naruto followed Eno down the roads of Konoha to her family-owned flower shop in silence. As she opened the door to the closed shop, she decided to give him one more warning. This is your last chance to back out now. She said, if you lie after this point, Yeah? You'll hurt me. Your threats don't scare me, Eno. Naruto interrupted passively. He was getting quite tired of the animosity. He understood she was angry, but he refused to let her scare him off. Either she was going to get in there and talk with him humanely, or there was going to be a fight. Her 2 punches were something he saw coming, but he knew it had been a few years since he had seen her in action, and considering what Sakura learned from Tsunade in a little less than 3 years, maybe he should be at least a little apprehensive. Eno sneered and opened the door. Naruto followed her inside and crossed his arms once Eno closed it. So I just wanted to say that I'm not changing my decision. Please know this before you go into some long speech like Tsunade-sama did. Eno interrupted, holding up her hand. Whatever it is you want to talk about, just know that you won't be able to change my mind. Of course, Naruto didn't believe that. He nevertheless nodded to show his understanding in order to at least earn him the gratitude of being heard out. Okay, Eno. I would just like to know why, if that's okay. Why throw away the career that you've worked so hard on? Eno really didn't want to answer that question but knew that she had to honor her word. If you're really that insistent on knowing. It's because after I heard about Sakura's death, and then later seeing my sensei die in my arms, I realized something being a kunoichi is too dangerous for me. Naruto said nothing during Eno's pause, allowing her to elaborate. I want to grow up, get married, have many kids, and start a family of my own someday. These are dreams of mine where every time I think about them, they put a smile on my face. So how can I expect to do that if I'm a kunoichi who risks her life on missions every day? How can I expect to live past 20 if I can die on a mission next week? How can I expect to live a peaceful life when death surrounds not only me, but my loved ones? She looked Naruto in his eyes, her voice growing in volume with every word she spoke. If you have an answer for me, Naruto, please enlighten me. Naruto took a deep breath. Believe it or not, she had more valid points than he expected. To be honest with you, Eno, I don't really have an answer to any of those questions. Then why are we even here right now? She almost demanded. Why are we having this conversation? Because you're being unreasonable, he said simply. Eno's eyebrows lowered closer to her eyes, seemingly offended at that response. I'm being unreasonable? She exclaimed, pointing at herself. I'm not the one disturbing someone's peace right now. I'm not the one trying to influence someone else's decisions for themselves. All I'm doing is trying to do what's best for me. You, on the other hand, seem to have this unreasonable thought process of thinking that I'm not supposed to be abandoning my shinobi career when you have absolutely no idea what's meant for me. You don't even know me. Naruto simply stood there, taking in Eno's words with almost no type of external reaction. I know that you're Sakura's best friend, and I know that she wouldn't want you to quit either. Not like this. The purple-wearing blonde woman scoffed. Oh, so you're a mind reader now? If you're secretly a member of my clan, then we should be having a whole other discussion. Naruto shook his head. I'm no mind reader. And I'm no Yamanaka. But I'm a very close friend of Sakura's too. I know that she has the will of fire in her, and I know that she would rather die for her village than to revoke her opportunity of being of service to one of the greatest nations to exist in the world. Eno rubbed her forehead, seemingly trying hard to not get overly frustrated with this conversation. You know, the Hokage told me something similar, and it's only confirming that we'll be talking in circles at this point. Maybe I just don't have that will of fire everyone boasts so much about in this village. Maybe I just want to live a happy and long life without worrying about people wanting to kill me every time I step out beyond these gates. Did you ever think about that? No, I didn't. Naruto said honestly. And I didn't because I know that it isn't true. You do have the will of fire in you, Eno. Everyone in Konoha does. I think you're just scared. Eno audibly groaned. She was tempted to just say screw it and walk out. Obviously I'm scared, Naruto. That's my whole point here. I'm scared of dying before I can make my dreams come true. I'm scared that I'll be next, and will be sent to the afterlife right after my sensei and best friend who I almost consider a sister. That terrifies me, Naruto, and that's the main reason I don't want to do this shit anymore. The young flower girl stepped forward upon exclaiming her last sentence, but Naruto stood his ground. There was a pregnant pause between the pair as they continued their stare-off, communicating strictly with their emotions. Eno was fired up, and Naruto was as stubborn as a mule. So you're just going to quit, huh? Like some sort of coward? Naruto asked, holding on to his demeanor. Eno's immediate response was nonverbal, as she quickly threw her knuckles into the side of Naruto's cheek. The Uzumaki hadn't seen it coming this time, and she hit him hard enough to make him take a couple of steps back. He even had to make sure none of his teeth had cracked. After ensuring that the punch did no real damage, Naruto slowly looked back at the tense woman, who was now starting to breathe heavy with rage. Instead of getting angry with her, Naruto lightly chuckled. Heh, so you're brave enough to punch a comrade in the face, but not brave enough to serve your village? Maybe you really should quit. Fuck you, Naruto. She spat at his tone. You don't know a damn thing. You don't have any family, any friends. You don't know what it's like to have other plans for your life because all you know is being an annoying mediocre shinobi with a huge mouth. Just because you want to dedicate your life to going out screwing up missions and getting your ass kicked by enemies doesn't mean you should influence others to do the same. Is that what you think being a shinobi is all about? That's what I think your life as a shinobi is about. She responded. Sakura told me about all the times you screwed up missions, almost got yourself killed, hindered your team's success, or any combination of the three. Not to mention how you let Sasuke escape from the village. To top it all off, you're a complete and total screw-up, Naruto. I can understand why Tsunade-sama, the leader of this village who also trained me these past few years, wouldn't want me to quit. But you? A shinobi who's failed for most of his life. If it wasn't for Irika feeling bad for you all those years ago, you wouldn't have even made the cut to become a shinobi in the first place. I've been a witness to you dragging on behind the rest of us for years, constantly failing, being annoying, and just simply being the worst. And you think you have the right to question my actions as a kunoichi? I know I'm not cut out to be a shinobi anymore, but at least I made it to be a chunin like the rest of our graduating class, something you obviously haven't done. So please, Naruto, spare me from your bullshit. Things don't always revolve around the way you want to see them. By this point, anyone witnessing this heated discussion would agree that Naruto had every right to be angry. Eno's words were as sharp as razor blades. They cut him, but he still remained unfazed. He knew that she was just trying to get him to back off more than anything. Does it make you feel good to be this hurtful? He asked. Eno had to admit that she was hit with a small amount of guilt. Okay, maybe some of that was a bit uncalled for, but you're pissing me the hell off, Naruto. Can we just be finished with this talk so you can tell me what happened to Sakura? I held up my end of the bargain, figuring that any further discussion on the topic would simply make the blue-eyed woman more hostile than she already was. He decided that he'll leave the topic alone for now. Fine. Let me just ask you one more question, okay? Naruto requested. Eno took a deep inhale to calm herself before nodding. If Sakura was still alive, would you change your mind about quitting? Eno stood there, letting his question marinate. She didn't really care for giving Naruto an answer to that question, as she was more interested in figuring out how that question applies to what actually happened to her best friend. She dissected all of the information Naruto gave her from the moment he called to her up to now, and ultimately decided to answer his question with another question. Naruto, does what happened to Sakura have something to do with you? The Jinchuriki was unable to hide his shock at such a question. Eno picked up on his body language and continued studying him as he tried to come up with an answer. I'll tell you what happened to her after you. What did you do to her? Eno demanded, tired of answering his questions. Now it was her turn to get some answers. Due to Naruto's hesitance to lie, his body became a bit tense, and he started avoiding eye contact. Truth be told, he'd experienced nightmares of scenarios similar to this. This only confirmed that Naruto was involved in whatever happened on that mission. He clearly wasn't just a witness. I didn't do anything, he stated, using the Kyuubi as a scapegoat in his mind to coax himself into believing that it was the truth. Sakura is my comrade. I would never hurt her. Eno squinted her eyes. She didn't believe him. Holding out her hands towards him, directly in front of his face, with her index finger, middle finger, and thumb on both hands pressing together to form an oval shape, she called out the name of a jutsu that reminded Naruto why the Yamanaka clan was such a gifted group of shinobi. Shintenshin no Jutsu. Before Naruto could do much of anything, both he and Eno's bodies soon fell down to their knees, completely unconscious. Due to the number of times Eno had performed this jutsu, it didn't take her long to discover the root of Naruto's subconsciousness. Usually, when performing the technique, she would be surrounded by darkness that felt like a void but would have access to her subject's thoughts and memories, even repressed ones. She would normally be able to comb through them as if she were in a library and go more in depth to view and experience these memories to obtain whatever information she may need. This was the other half of the Shinrushin no Jutsu, compared to its other ability to take over her target's mind and control them physically. However, that wasn't the case this time. As soon as she arrived into Naruto's subconsciousness, she could instantly feel something was off. She could feel what she could only describe as evil. There was sinister chakra somewhere near her, and the feeling of it made her so uneasy. She wondered if Naruto was simply an evil being himself. However, this chakra felt nothing like Naruto's. It didn't even feel human. Suddenly, Eno could feel herself standing ankle-deep in what she assumed was water. Visibility increased once the torches along the walls of whatever room she was in had ignited, revealing a very large cell with iron bars in front of her. She couldn't see anything amidst the darkness in the cell until she found herself staring at a pair of illuminated red eyes. They stared back at her with a look that instantly increased her anxiety, leaving her frozen in place. Just what the hell was this place? Ahaha, what good fortune. A Yamanaka, appearing right at my front door. Eno was bug-eyed. That voice sounded nothing like Naruto's. Before she could even muster up a valid response, the water inside of the cell had started to bubble and shift into a sunset red color, spreading over into the section of water she was standing in. She wanted to run, but she couldn't. She closed her eyes and tried to eject out of the area, but she unable to do that as well. Once the bubbly substance reached her feet and ankles, her lower body began shaking. Chakra of such density and foulness instantly reacted with her body upon contact, and it didn't feel good. You will prove to be very useful for my plans, young one. This won't take very long. As the Kyuubi's chakra crawled up higher and higher up her legs, she closed her eyes and tried everything she could to escape whatever was happening to her. She prayed that this was just a bad dream. But as the chakra had reached her stomach, it somehow seeped through into her body through her belly button and continued to slowly flow into her. Eno could only stand there as it happened. What she thought would be a good idea to obtain information ended up turning into one of the worst experiences of her life. As Anko handed her friend a fresh cup of lavender tea to soothe her anxiety, she heard another knock at her door. It had only been around 45 minutes since Kurenai showed up, so it was quite unusual for there to be 2 knocks at her door in one morning back-to-back like this. Thanks, Anko, mumbled Kurenai, a bit winded from her breakdown. Go answer your door, I kind of need a minute alone anyway. Anko nodded sympathetically and walked over to her front door. After opening it, she was greeted by a woman wearing a sleek A&B uniform, and a cat mask over her face. "You-chan?" Anko responded with a raised eyebrow. "Wow, long time no see. It has been a while, hasn't it?" Yugao Yuzuki said, placing a hand on her hip. "As much as I'd love to catch up, I'm actually here to tell you that the Hokage has summoned you. She says it's urgent." "Oh. Alright." Anko mumbled, turning back towards the jounin sitting on her couch. "Kurenai, I'll be right back. Feel free to make yourself at home." "Kurenai?" Yugao asked, taking her mask off and peering inside the apartment. Anko stepped aside and Yugao stepped in to see her longtime friend sitting there with multiple used tissues surrounding her. She immediately noted the lack of makeup applied and the bags under her eyes, frowning since she heard the news about Asuma just a few moments prior to arriving here. Despite her lingering melancholy, Kurenai forced a smile. She hadn't seen Yugao in what felt like years. "Yugao, it's really good to see you." The ANBU member gave a sad smile in return. "Yeah, you too." Yugao then paused, as she felt the tug of conflicting responsibilities for just a moment. "Hey, I promise to talk to you soon. Right now, I have to take Little Miss Troublemaker here to see the Hokage." Anko knew that wasn't a good sign. "Oh, I guess that means I'm in trouble?" "Probably, considering I have to escort you." Yugao responded. "Ah shit." Anko sighed. This wasn't her first rodeo, after all, getting in trouble with the Hokage. On the account that she's had struggles with performing assault, giving malicious threats, endangerment of life, and even extortion if she was really being a bad girl. She'd been in and out of the Hokage's office on a semi-regular basis. Luckily, she'd been able to score empathy points with both the third and the fifth, seeing as she always found out a way to explain her reasoning for performing these crimes, as she could usually justify it as something the victim had triggered, which was usually the case. Or she simply was good enough to cover her tracks. So she'd never seriously been punished, but knew that she'd been awfully close a handful of times, and had even gotten used to some of the lesser punishments, such as brief suspensions, community service, etc., when she did get caught. The worst part about this particular moment was that there was a long quiet streak where she hadn't heard from the Hokage in a while, despite no decrease in her run-ins with trouble, so it was hard to pinpoint exactly what this summoning was for. Needing to be escorted usually meant that it was going to take quite some effort to defend herself. "I understand, Yugao. Anko, I think I'm going to take a nap, if that's okay," Kurenai stated as she laid down onto the couch cushions. Anko nodded. "Go ahead, Kurenai. Let's go, Yu-chan." After stepping out of the apartment square, Anko and Yugao walked side by side as they headed for the Hokage Tower. "As your friend, I think I should give you a heads up by warning you that the Hokage isn't particularly in a good mood today," Yugao said from behind her mask. Apparently someone really got under her skin earlier this morning. The Tokubetsu jounin sighed and crossed her arms. "Great. Usually, I'm more prepared for moments like this, but I have to admit that I'm a bit caught off guard." The sensory specialist shook her head. "I would have assumed that you'd be used to it by now." "I am. This time just feels different." Yugao snickered. "Still the same, Anko, I see." She then turned her head to her friend as she changed the subject. "How's Kurenai doing?" "I heard about Asuma." Anko frowned as she looked at the ground. "She's going through the motions. I think you could do and say some things that will help her more than I can, considering I've never experienced what you both have been through." Yugao huffed. "Yeah, maybe. Still, it's good that you're there for her. I haven't really been as good of a friend, seeing as it feels like forever since we last spoke." "You've been busy. Don't beat yourself up about it." "I try not to." There was a brief silence between the two ladies as they continued walking. "I'd really like for us all to be friends again, by the way," Anko stated simply. "We are friends, dummy. Better friends." Yugao grinned underneath her mask. "Okay, Anko. We'll all be better friends." A few minutes later, Anko and Yugao arrived at the door leading to the Hokage's office. Just as Yugao was about to knock, Anko swiftly grabbed a hold of her wrist to stop her. "Now just hold on a sec," Anko murmured, rubbing her chin. "You said that she wasn't in a good mood, right?" Yeah? On a scale from mildly annoyed to extremely freaking pissed, where would you say she's at?" Yugao shrugged her shoulders. When she told me to get you," she said, and I quote, "tell Anko to bring her ass over here. It's time that I've dealt with her crap too, so," Anko hummed to herself. That doesn't sound too bad. Still, I'll have to be on my A-game." The young jounin then took a deep breath and forced a nice big smile before barging into Tsunade's office with her hands casually placed behind her head. "Yo, what's up, Fifth? I hope your day is going well." Yugao then entered the room, shaking her head. With her head still facing down at the paperwork on her desk, Tsunade's eyes leered up at the woman who just gave herself a loud and unnecessary entrance into her office. "You knew you were in trouble, so you decided it was a good idea to barge into my office like this?" Tsunade grunted. "That was definitely her idea, not mine," Yugao quickly offered as a defense. "Yugao, get out of here," Anko said in a hushed tone, sending a quick leer back at the other violet-haired woman. "Actually, Yugao will be staying right here. You're the one that messed up, Anko," the slug queen declared, pushing her paperwork to the side and leaning forward on the desk to look Anko right in her eyes. Anko nervously held on to her friendly demeanor as a sweat drop slid down the back of her head. "I plead the fifth," she stated, raising her hands innocently. A smirk then touched her lips, get it? Fifth, as Anko shot Tsunade with a pair of finger guns, there was a long and pregnant pause filled with silence up until a short snicker was heard from a short-haired woman in the corner of the room. Sorry. Apologized Shizen, holding a hand in front of her mouth to stifle further laughter. I just got it. Shizen out. Why yes, milady. With that, Shizen left the room, leaving Anko, Yugao, and Tsunade as the only occupants. Anko, cut the bullshit. I need you to take this seriously since you broke a serious law in our village. I'm liable to have you locked up for a long time, Tsunade explained to her, doubling down on the level of strictness in her voice. Anko sighed and decided to face her punishment like a big girl, sitting in the chair across from Tsunade's desk. Alright. On what grounds am I faulted for? Tsunade crossed her arms. Aside from the pending things just waiting to go on your record, your most recent screw-up might definitely be the biggest one thus far. Anko gulped. Which is? Tsunade blinked twice as she took a breath and rubbed her forehead. Anko, why on earth did you tell Naruto about his parents? Anko cursed mentally. She thought she might have had more time with that one. Damn it, I specifically told Naruto not to tell you about that. I'm well aware of that, Anko. The good news about that is that Naruto has actually been a man of his word in that regard. Huh? Anko raised an eyebrow. So how did you find out? Anko felt a hand being placed on her shoulder. The jounin in fishnets slowly turned her head to eye the Nico mask staring back at her. It was then that it dawned on her. I've secretly been keeping tabs on Naruto since he returned from his last mission, with Yugao's assistance. I know everything from that night in the bar to your little pretend date at the barbecue shack. Tsunade explained. Anko almost hadn't heard her, as she was still cursing her friend out in her mind, hoping she had enough sensory ability to sense the hostile intent growing in her. Shit, well, if you truly know everything, then you know Naruto was going through some turbulent emotions at the time. I was only trying to help him feel better, Anko explained, shrugging Yugao's hand off her shoulder in mock disgust. Besides, the Gaki didn't even believe me when I told him. Tsunade shook her head. Anko, do you even realize how much more complicated this can get once Naruto starts realizing that it's true? It's bad enough that we have the Akatsuki hunting after him, but if word gets out and the other countries learn of Naruto's heritage, then we'll not only have to worry about them too, but they might even see that they have a common interest with the Akatsuki. Anko lifted her hands defensively. Now just wait a minute. Fifth, let's not go to extremes here. Naruto learning about his parents may not be as bad as you think. I'm sure if we tell him to keep it on the hush note then everything will be fine. You even said he's a man of his word. Yes, to an extent. You saw how eager he was to ask about them when you were out with him. You even had to practically force him to promise not to say anything. Anko quickly turned to the woman beside her, wishing she could burn a hole in that mask with her own 2 eyes. God, Yu-chan. Did you have to tell her everything? Yugao was doing her job, Anko. Tsunade interjected quickly. You, on the other hand, are the one that knew the repercussions of breaking that law, and did it anyway. I wasn't even aware that you knew about his heritage, to begin with. I hate to break it to you, but it's a tad obvious if you give it any real thought, Hokage-sama. Anko admitted. I mean, Kami, you can pretty much see the resemblance if you compare Naruto's face to the fourths on the monument behind us. And the law mostly revolved around talking about the Kyuubi, which he apparently already knew about, more than it did about talking of his parents, so. The blonde's leer hardened. Quit trying to find loopholes and excuses. You knew that it was a risky thing to do. The third made it so that not many people knew of Naruto's lineage, including Naruto himself, and for a good reason. Anko's frustration came to a head as she was backed into a corner. She quickly stood up from her seat and placed her hands on Tsunade's desk, meeting Tsunade's leer with one of her own. Alright, fine. It's not the first time I broke the rules and it probably won't be my last. I did it because I felt the Gaki deserved to know, as if the poor bastard hasn't had it rough enough already. So if you're going to lock me up for it, then let's just get it over with. Anko dramatically stated, pushing her wrists out in front of her to prepare for the handcuffs. Tsunade only stared at Anko, analyzing her. You must really care about Naruto, huh? I do. She answered, he's this village's hero, you and I both know that. You wouldn't even be sitting in that chair if not for him, I'm sure. I keep up with his records more than I care to admit. The Godame took Anko's point well enough as a small grin touched her lips. Put your hands down, Anko. I'm not locking you up. Phew. Anko quickly huffed. I admit that I was kinda bluffing there. You honestly would have had to catch me, and it would have been a fun yet brief chase for me. Yugao commented. Anko sent her a look. Quiet you, Tsunade rolled her eyes. Oh, how she wishes to have that youthful and rebellious streak in Anko that she once had. In any case you're still not in the clear, Anko. I can pardon you for what you did, but you do have to realize that stuff like that can have a domino effect. You could be making my job a lot more difficult for me. I could also be making it easier, if you think about it. Replied the special jounin, throwing a bit of reverse psychology into the mix. Oh, you will be making my job easier for me after today. Tsunade crossed her arms. So here's what you're going to do for me, in place of me not locking you up for breaking the law. Since you seem to have a connection with Naruto of sorts, I'm going to assign Yugao's task to you. I want you to keep tabs on Naruto's behavior, and report anything I should know about him over to me. Anko had to admit that the idea of that was not something she was immediately receptive to. Hanging out with the kid was one thing, but constantly spying on him, clocking his every move, and spilling any info that he trusts with her and her alone. There was a reason Anko didn't enlist in the ANBU forces. There just wasn't much freedom in it for her, especially when the missions were internal. I don't know, Fifth. Naruto has enough supervision on him as it is, considering he has Yamato and Kakashi. Why would I need to be a part of that? For multiple reasons. One of them being that it's an order from the Hokage, so it's not optional. I see that you have earned a lot of Naruto's trust with how you handled him at his worst that night at the bar, so now you can get closer to him. As I can tell, he means a lot to you. I'm assigning this to you to test your loyalty to both him and the Hokage, seeing as you're so willing to break rules for him. It was rare for Anko not to have a response to something. Tsunade noted the Jounin's silence and continued. I also already know about the truth of what happened with Sakura on his mission, and how he told you, Yamato, and Kakashi to withhold that information from me. While I don't blame him for it, the fact that he wasn't honest is why I need a trusted confidant to keep me up to date with what's actually going on with him. Kakashi and Yamato are doing well enough, but he's opened up to you rather quickly. So that's why I need you to be another crucial piece in that plan. Anko sat there, staring at her lap in deep thought, until, he was just scared. The QB caused him to kill his comrade, which would be traumatizing for anyone. I don't blame him for not telling you, he probably just needed time to process. Tsunade nodded. I know, and you're right. However, this village runs on truth and efficiency. As empathetic as I am toward Naruto and his situation, I still have a job to do, which is why, between you and I'll wait for him to come clean on his own with no repercussions coming to him. I think that's what he was going to do earlier this morning, but I sent him off to handle something else. I need your help in keeping tabs on him in the future, for the village's and his own sake. Can you do that for me, Anko? Anko took a deep breath. She really didn't enjoy the idea of Tsunade's proposal, as something about it just made her feel a bit ill inside. But she did have some valid points, and it wasn't as if she could say no, regardless. Fine. I'll do it. Inside Naruto's mindscape, Eno wasn't sure how much time had passed since it all started. The process of the sickly essence breaching into her body was slow, and it was difficult to have a sense of time. Not only was it painful, but she could also feel every bit of foulness that this chakra was emanating, feeling it pulsing inside her own body. It even burned, to a degree, as if it were a lava-like substance, making it a very unique kind of pain unlike any other. She just wanted it to stop. She had tried again and again to release her jutsu and return back to her own body, but it was futile. She was stuck. She just barely heard from beyond the QB's dark laughter. The laughter ceased, and amidst the dark space she was in, suddenly, she was face to face with something. Someone emanating with pure white light. With her wrists and ankles bound by chains, Eno creaked her eyes open to see her blurry vision focusing on this luminous figure. Once her vision adapted, any pain that she felt was just briefly forgotten about as she saw who was looking right at her. As Sakura? Eno murmured, confirming those emerald green eyes of hers. Sakura stared back at her with concern, before turning to the figure in the cage that was angrily glaring at them both. What are you doing to her, you monster? Sakura demanded, clenching her fists. Leave Eno alone. The beast inside the cage growled ferociously. You little run, how is it that I have not been able to catch you yet? Sakura didn't care to answer that question, as she turned back to Eno. As foolish as it may have seemed, she listened to the intuition that was telling her to grab at the unknown essence seeping into her friend through her stomach as if it were solid and pull it as hard as she could. The red, boiling substance made Sakura grit her teeth as it burned her hands, but she was determined to stop this process however she could. Grr, stop. Don't meddle in with my plans. The demand went unheard as Sakura gathered all her strength, and succeeded in pulling this strange chakra out of Eno as if it were a hose. With a loud and feral roar, more of the substance had risen up from within the cell, in the form of a large tidal wave coming straight for the two girls. As the large wave passed through the bars and towards Sakura, with a knowingness she could not describe, she took a deep inhale of her breath and stood there as the chakra crashed and submerged the two girls under it. Kurama's predetermined victory went unheeded, as she saw a light translucent bubble surrounding the two girls, protecting them both. The QB's essence faded away, and Sakura opened her eyes to give the beast one last glare. She turned toward the bound kunoichi behind her, and broke the chains holding her with strength that made it look effortless. Eno passed out as she was released, and Sakura caught her before placing her gently onto the floor below. I'm not sure if I can pull this off the way you showed me, but it's worth a shot. It's not safe for you here, said the spirit of Sakura before flipping through the memorized seals. She then placed 2 fingers on Eno's forehead and called out the word, release. With a bright flash of light within the protective bubble, Eno's spirit left the realm they were in. You'll pay for that. The demon now taking after her animalistic form behind bars promised. I don't know how it is that you've managed to elude me like this, but I'll figure out a way to devour you as I've originally intended. Sakura had no verbal response. She simply sent the demon one last challenging look before forming a tiger seal, releasing her own spirit from the area as well. With a sharp inhale of air, Naruto quickly jerked awake and rose his torso up from his position on the floor. He breathed hard as he gathered a sense of where he was. able only to remember the fact that Eno had used her Shinrushin no Jutsu on him. He turned to his left to see Eno still unconscious next to him. "Eno?" Naruto called out, lightly jerking her shoulder. He continued calling her name and slowly increasing his force to shake her awake, but to no avail. He placed 2 fingers on a vital sign under her jaw and was relieved to feel a pulse. Still, it wasn't good that she was still unconscious. If it was her technique, then surely she would return to her body at the same time he did, right? Not entirely sure of what else to do, Naruto scooped Eno's body into his arms and laid her down gently onto a nearby bench inside the flower shop. He took a seat in a nearby chair and decided to just wait until she was conscious again. He wasn't entirely sure about what happened after Eno used her technique, but he just had this gut feeling that something wasn't right. Somewhere, in the heart of Konoha, for the past 3 years since Lady Tsunade had assumed the position of Godame Hokage, Konohagakura's medical facilities and infrastructure underwent a substantial upgrade. As one of the best healers and medical practitioners in Fire Country, the Slug Queen made the healthcare of the village a priority. How can a village prosper if the people couldn't get the care they needed? It was for this reason that Konoha's Central Hospital was a place that supplied top-notch treatment, both with herbal medicines and chakra-enhanced treatment. Shinobi in particular are prone to hazardous injuries and ailments, yet those who enter usually come out in better condition, a lot more now than it had under Hiruzen's rule. The Saname always was more of a war hero. One of the individuals currently receiving such care was a woman from Kumo, who had suffered serious injuries at the hands of the Akatsuki. Luckily, she was brought to the facility just in the nick of time. It was noted by the medical staff that she was recovering from her wounds much faster than one would assume, however, which was something that had only been seen by one other shinobi in the village. Sitting in a chair across from the medical bed that this woman laid in was Shikamaru. He sat there, eyeing the unconscious blonde kunoichi as he swam through his thoughts. It was taking him quite some effort not to convince himself that Asuma's death was her fault. They had a mission, and they carried it out. Asuma's death had meaning, but at the cost of saving someone from an enemy village? Shikamaru still didn't fully understand Tsunade's decision to save her in the first place, but it wasn't necessarily his job to understand everything. His thoughts were interrupted when the woman started stirring awake. Her cat-like eyes adjusted to the well-lit room as she scanned the various monitor wires and tubes attached to her body. Those eyes then scanned the room, before landing on Shikamaru. "So you're finally awake," he said, sticking with the eye contact. Yujito did another scan of the room. "Who are you? Where am I?" she asked. "I'm technically your hero. And you're in Konoha's Central Hospital. You're being treated for life-threatening wounds." Yujito said nothing. She was hit with flashbacks of a tough fight with 2 strange individuals wearing black robes with red clouds. At the end of her flashback, she recalled how she wasn't particularly in a winning position. "Saved by Konohanin, huh?" she scoffed. "Good luck trying to interrogate me later. I won't tell you guys a thing. No one is going to interrogate you. Then what other reason do you have for saving me?" she asked. Shikamaru only stared at her for a few more moments before standing up, heading for the door. "The Hokage will speak to you about that, now that you're awake." After leaving the Hokage Tower, Anko managed to pick up Naruto's trail pretty quickly. She noted the signs of a small scuffle outside of the tower before 2 trails headed off eastward. She was now following the tracks, all while wondering what she got herself roped up into. She was glad to have convinced the Hokage to let her do the mission her way, at least to some degree. If she was going to spy on the little blonde boy, she was going to do it while he knew she was there. Anko didn't believe in spying on comrades inside the sanctity of their own home, and made sure to let Tsunade know how that could backfire on her. She couldn't bargain for much else, but decided that whatever information was worthy of telling the Hokage would be under her jurisdiction, whether or not the Hokage herself may deem it important. She believed that some things needed to be kept hidden from others, at least until the time was right, and info about people's personal lives shouldn't have to be secretly relayed. The snake summoner soon started chuckling after that judgment, seeing as it not only conflicted with her actions of telling Naruto what she knew about his parents, but also with her entire career as a kunoichi. Most of her job consisted of nothing more than being an information-holding soldier that carries out tasks of seeking out more information, or keeping that information hidden. So in the end, no matter how you see it, what Anko chose or chose not to share with the Hokage was entirely up to her, unless Tsunade chose to have her under surveillance too, which was probably the case. Anko only hoped that it wasn't Yugao this time. Further thoughts on the matter were cut off when Anko saw the tracks leading to the Yamanaka flower shop. The Jounin opened the door and stepped inside, to spot her target sitting in the room, with an unconscious Yamanaka heir lying on a bench. Naruto looked up at the woman who entered the shop before continuing to stare at Eno. "Yo, Naruto. What's up?" Anko greeted, walking by and staring at the other woman in the building. "Why is Inoichi's daughter passed out like this?" "It's the drawback of a technique she used. I'm just waiting for her to wake up." Of course, Anko knew the girl was alive. She still felt obligated to check her pulse just to make sure. "How long has she been out?" Naruto looked at his watch. "About an hour now, I think." "Ah." Anko murmured, "Is everything okay?" Naruto looked up at Anko for a few seconds before shaking her head. "Yeah. It's just last I recall she was very pissed with me. I don't know how she'll react once she wakes up." She hummed, I knew you had a little heartbreaker streak in there somewhere. What? No, I didn't break her heart. He then looked away. Well, I guess in a way I did. But it's not like that. Due to recent events, Anko found no reason to prod further. I hear ya. I suppose it's not my business anyway. Is there anything I can help you out with at least? The young Jinchuriki gave Anko a quizzical look for a brief moment. Are you drunk? What? Anko blurted. No. I don't have to be drunk to be helpful, you know. Naruto shrugged and held his hands defensively. You did tell me when you were drunk that you're not particularly this friendly while sober, so, Anko huffed. That really does sound like something drunk Anko would say. No, I'm very sober right now. I'm just trying to be here for you, kid. Naruto frowned. I'm not a kid. Anko shrugged. I was almost inclined to disagree, but I have seen what you're working with. Huh, nothing. Anko then decided to take her leave. She felt she'd seen enough and didn't particularly feel a need to dive right into her mission so eagerly. Well, I'll be seeing you around, Gaki. Try not to miss me too much. And within that moment, he was alone with Eno's body again. She's so weird. Naruto sighed, looking at Eno again. It was then, however, that he saw that Eno's eyes were open. And she was staring right back into his own. Naruto had to shake off the chills that ran through his entire body. Naruto. She called calmly. I know. He responded, nodding. She looked away for a moment, seemingly caught up in thought for a few moments before looking at him again. You're not a monster. She told him, analyzing his reaction. He just looked away for a few moments, saying nothing. Eno held her head as she sat up on the bench she was laid upon. But you do have one inside you. Naruto sighed, nodding. He was afraid that she might run into her. The reason he was trying not to panic was that when she used that technique, he had no memory of being in any alternate space upon waking up. This meant that he was truly unconscious, while Eno was alone and unattended inside of whatever alternate space she found herself in, including that one. Yeah. You saw it then, she nodded. She could recall almost every detail of what went down in there. She even had to check to see if her abdomen was okay. I did. And I saw Sakura, too. Naruto's eyes widened. You did? Is she okay? Yeah. She said she saved me. Saved you? He repeated, trying to make sense of it. You were in danger? She admitted, but she was like an angel. And she protected me from it. Naruto was at a loss for words. It connected with that one time he managed to see her. This confirmed that she still existed, but she was dead? Was the afterlife truly not as black and white as one may think? Naruto, she softly called again, looking at him empathetically. What happened on that mission? Naruto looked away. It's not something I like to think about. 4 days ago, on the Tenchi Bridge, as another massive explosion raged on throughout the area, Yamato grit his teeth as he struggled to keep his eye on the four-tailed beast rampaging on, its only target being Orochimaru, who was dodging and avoiding it. Yamato understood the importance of his role in this mission, given his abilities. But how on earth was he supposed to catch something that was easily a dozen times stronger and faster than he was, on top of not possibly getting killed in the process? Much to Yamato's dismay, as much as he insisted that Sakura stay safe, she was maneuvering around trying to snap Naruto out of it herself. With each passing second, more and more of the landscape was getting destroyed as Naruto hunted after Orochimaru, who was shockingly able to keep up with him, if not barely. As Yamato witnessed Naruto's possessed form crashing backward after getting hit by one of Orochimaru's ninjutsu, he cursed as he was forced to immediately change course. Sakura was over 500 meters away, and from how it seemed, Naruto landed pretty close to her location. He could only hope that she wouldn't get too close to him as he ran over as fast as he could. Sakura Haruno managed to see exactly where Naruto landed and rushed over to him. She just wanted to do anything to help him, as she knew that this form could not only be destructive to anyone and anything around him, but also to himself. Naruto, she declared, rushing over to the mountainside he was embedded in. Please listen to me. I need you to snap out of it. She landed in front of the raised topography that the four-tailed beast climbing itself out of the hole it created was inside of. It didn't even give Sakura so much of a glance as it leaped and landed a few feet behind Sakura's location, making her turn around. It eyed Orochimaru's figure from a distance, seeing as his neck stretched out above some of the trees, searching for the boy. Naruto simply sat there. Sakura soon felt the energy around them shifting, drawing to a particular point in front of the beast's darkened face. The pinkette watched as a small dark orb of chakra formed, growing larger in size and density with each second. Sakura saw what that technique could do already, and at this rate, Naruto will tear down the whole forest trying to kill Orochimaru. She ran as fast as she could. With the beast's head raised and drawing in the dark energy, it didn't notice Sakura standing a few meters in front of it, her hands held up cautiously. Naruto, please. I know you're angry. I know it hurts. But please take a second to realize what you're doing, she begged him, watching as the orb grew to be larger than the size of her body. She knew the real Naruto was in there somewhere. She just had to figure out a way to get to him. She hesitated with her next response, as the winds drew in from the magnitude of this dense chakra made it difficult to hold her ground. I know what I practically forced you to promise me before you left, and it wasn't right for me to do. You can forget about it now, Naruto. You don't need to burden yourself with trying to save Sasuke for me anymore. To her surprise, the tailed beast bomb in front of her started decreasing in size. I care about you just as much as I care about Sasuke, Naruto. Please don't put that promise over everything else that's important in your life. I need you here with me. The beast bomb grew smaller and smaller until it dissipated. Naruto's four-tailed form was now looking right at Sakura, who had started to smile a bit as she saw her words getting through to him. I really do care about you, Naruto. It pains me to see you like this, she mumbled, stepping closer to him. Naruto's face still looked eerily demonic and unchanged, but he was calm. Sakura saw that as a good sign. She was soon close enough to reach out and touch him, and then did exactly that. Ouch! She yelped once she reached up to touch his face, as his chakra-covered form burned through her glove and scalded her hand. She then gave a soft chuckle. Maybe I shouldn't have done that. Sakura was the low growl that emitted from him. Naruto slowly rose his clawed hand up, in a seeming gesture to caress her face just as she did. Yes, it's me. Sakura was cut off when the hand clasped tightly around her neck. And Naruto, what are you dash? Then in a sudden shock of pain, Sakura's eyes widened once she felt the other claw of Naruto penetrating and ripping through her abdominal area like paper. Eno sat there, staring at the hardwood floors of her flower shop, completely lost in thought once Naruto finished. Naruto sighed. Explaining things hasn't gotten easier, but he was starting to be thankful that he wasn't conscious enough to know what was happening after blacking out. Waking up to the aftermath was terrible, but he could only fathom how much worse it'd be for him if he was conscious enough to recall the ugly details. I'm sorry. I know it must be terrible having to contain something like that inside you. She sighed and looked him in his eyes. It's not your fault. It's just very unfortunate. Yeah. Naruto sighed. I was in a really dark place soon after, but luckily someone was able to bring me back to reality. Let me guess. Anko? Eno asked. Yeah. How'd you know? The corners of Eno's mouth curled into a grin. Lucky guess. I could tell when she walked in that she cares about you. Anko works closely with my family, and I know that she's the type who only looks out for those she really cares about. Naruto blinked as he realized something. You were awake this whole time? Eno nodded. We woke up at the same time. I pretended to stay unconscious to see what you'd do if I was vulnerable. It's how I test people's true intentions. Oh, Naruto mumbled. So you just sat there for a whole hour to see if I'd hurt you? I wanted to see if you were desperate to hide information. You could have tried to make sure that I wouldn't say anything to the Hokage. She explained. Naruto nodded. It made sense from her perspective. What's funny is that I was actually on my way to tell her everything before I ran into you. Eno paused, replaying the events of today back in her mind. She quickly concluded that she owed Tsunade a well-deserved apology. I'm sorry for everything I said to you earlier, she sighed. I was in a pretty dark state of mind myself. It's not an excuse, but, Naruto shrugged, don't worry about it. Easier said than done. I was pretty hurtful. You may be annoying as hell, but you're not a monster. You could have had the mind to take advantage of me, but you didn't. You waited for me the entire time. A monster wouldn't do that. Naruto remained silent for a while. Thanks, Eno. She nodded, placing a hand on one of his. You're welcome, Naruto. Naruto was a little taken back at her use of physical contact. Her hands were soft, he noted. A thought then entered his mind as he looked her in the eyes. Do you still want to retire? Eno paused to think. I don't know. I was being pretty emotional earlier. I think I just need some time to think. Naruto smiled. He completed his task. Eno pulled her hand back and started readjusting her clothes. Also, Eno started. Sakura's spirit is still inside you, Naruto. I think the Kyuubi has her soul trapped. The Jinchuriki smile slid into a frown. I knew it, I saw her once before in my mindscape, but I wasn't sure if it was real or not. Do you know what this means? Naruto thought for a second. That we're able to communicate with her even though she's gone? Yes. She answered. It also means that we may be able to bring her back. Naruto's eyes slowly widened. It suddenly felt as though a weight was being lifted from his shoulders. What if Naruto saves Anko from Orochimaru? And thanks for watching my video till the end. If you enjoyed this content, then do consider subscribing to my channel, and leave a like if you guys need the next part. Comment down, and thanks for watching the video, and see you guys in the next video.